Hey guys, welcome to Fanfic Fanatics. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku was reborn into Doki Doki Literature Club movie. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is Fallen Roses of the Hero by KyleGaming_34. Back of the book. The sterile white of the hospital room seemed to amplify the hushed sorrow that hung in the air. Izuku Midoriya lay still against the crisp sheets, the weight of his final victory against all for one heavy not just on his weary body, but on the hearts of those gathered around him. This is not how I saw my life ending, Izuku thought, the words a silent lament in the growing stillness. Izuku, a familiar, gruff voice broke through his fading awareness. Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood friend and rival, stood at the edge of the bed, his spiky blonde hair casting shadows in the dim light. Yeah, Kachan, Izuku managed, his voice a mere whisper. Bakugo's crimson eyes, usually blazing with fierce determination, held a rare softness. I'll be the top here, for the both of us. The words were gruff, almost in order, yet they carried an unspoken weight of respect and loss. A faint smile touched Izuku's lips. Sure, don't let your ego get in your way though, he murmured, a soft chuckle escaping him before a sharp pain lanced through his chest. He coughed, and a dark blossom of blood stained the white linen. Ow, that hurt. Tsukauchi Naomasa, the detective who had been a steadfast ally throughout Izuku's journey, stepped closer, his trench coat a familiar silhouette. Of course it did, don't do that, kid. His voice, usually calm and measured, held a note of strained concern. As the warmth faded from Izuku's eyes, the sounds of his loved one's grief seemed to dim around him. One moment he was there, the next, a profound stillness enveloped him. It wasn't the void he'd imagined death to be, but rather a gentle, all-encompassing quiet. Then, a soft light began to coalesce in the distance, growing steadily brighter. It wasn't harsh or painful, but welcoming, like the first rays of dawn. As it drew closer, a figure began to take shape within the luminescence, the ethereal being from your back cover art. Her voice, when it came, was like the chime of distant bells, resonating not just in his ears but within his very being. Izuku Midoriya, she said, her gaze filled with a serene understanding. Your fight has ended, hero. You have saved many. Izuku, or what remained of his consciousness, felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in his tumultuous life. So, this is it, he thought, a hint of lingering sadness for those he was leaving behind. It could be, the goddess replied, her expression thoughtful. But there are other battles, other lives teetering on the edge. Lives that might yet be saved with a hero's touch. A flicker of his old determination sparked within him. Other lives. 4 young souls, she continued, her gaze softening with a hint of sorrow. Their world is one of quiet despair, masked by smiles and fleeting joys. They are on paths that lead to their own destruction, and no one in their world sees the shadows closing in. Izuku's heart, though no longer beating, ached at the thought of others suffering unseen. Can I help them? The goddess smiled gently. I can offer you a chance. A new beginning, in a world that desperately needs a hero, even if they don't yet know it. You will retain your memories, your strength, but the challenges will be different. Will you accept this chance, Izuku Midoriya? Will you become their unseen hero? Izuku's eyes widened at the sight of his familiar vigilante suit. It was a comforting piece of his past, a symbol of his journey as a hero. The confirmation that he would retain one for all was a huge relief, the power he had fought so hard to master still his to command. But then he saw the pistol. Its sleek, dark form was alien to everything he believed in as a hero. The words etched into its side, the judge, Shinpan, sent a shiver down his non-corporeal spine. Wait, why a gun? Izuku asked, his voice filled with confusion and a hint of alarm. I've never used one, and as a hero, the goddess's serene expression remained unchanged. Time is a precious commodity in their world, Izuku. Sometimes, the swiftest judgment is the only way to prevent greater suffering. And, she added, her gaze unwavering, this new path will require you to take a life for their sake. Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Izuku's mind reeled. Take a life. It went against everything All Might had taught him, everything he stood for. The goddess continued, her tone leaving no room for argument. Specifically, the one with the twin pink pigtails, Natsuki. Her home life is a cage of abuse, a constant torment inflicted by her father. This darkness will not respond to gentle words or heroic intervention. To save her from a devastating future, and ultimately the others who are affected by her pain, you may need to make a choice that will stain your hands with the blood of a guilty man. Relief washed over Izuku, followed immediately by a fresh wave of moral conflict. Killing an abuser was different, yet still a profound violation of his hero principles. He thought back to the brief glimpse of Natsuki, the subtle signs of vulnerability beneath her feisty exterior. The idea of her suffering ignited a familiar protective instinct within him. So, I wouldn't be killing her, Izuku clarified, a knot of tension still tight in his chest. No, the goddess confirmed. The festering wound in Natsuki's life is her father. His actions cast long shadows over her and, indirectly, the others. Removing him from the equation is a necessary evil to give them a chance at true happiness and to prevent a far greater tragedy. Izuku stared at the pistol again, the weight of its purpose settling upon him. It was a grim tool, a stark departure from his usual methods. But the image of Natsuki's hidden pain, coupled with the goddess's assurance, began to sway his resolve. This won't change who I am as a hero, will it? He asked, a desperate plea for reassurance. The goddess's smile was gentle but firm. It will test you, Izuku. It will force you to confront the darkness in ways you never imagined. But the heart of a hero lies in protecting the innocent, no matter the cost. Sometimes, the line between justice and mercy blurs in the face of true evil. Izuku took a deep, ethereal breath. The weight of this new mission was immense, the moral burden heavy. But the thought of those 4 girls, especially Natsuki, trapped in their unseen battles, spurred him forward. All right, he said, his voice firming with a newfound resolve. I'll do it, I'll be their unseen hero. Tell me what I need to do. Before you go, Izuku, the goddess continued, her voice clear and concise, there are a few crucial things you must understand about their world and your role within it. She gestured towards the fleeting images of the literature club that had just faded. Their world appears ordinary, much like the early days of your own. However, beneath the surface of everyday school life and seemingly innocent interactions lie deep emotional currents. Each of these 4 girls faces internal struggles that are invisible to those around them. Sayori, the girl with the red bow, masks a profound loneliness and depression with a bright and energetic facade. Her cheerful nature is a shield against an inner turmoil that threatens to overwhelm her. Yuri, the one with the long purple hair in the book, seeks solace and escape in literature. However, her introverted nature hides a growing instability and a fixation that could lead her down a dangerous path. Natsuki, with the pink pigtails, projects a tough and sometimes abrasive exterior. This is a defense mechanism against the abuse she suffers at home. Her anger and sharp words mask a deep yearning for kindness and validation. Her situation is the most immediately perilous. And finally, Monica, the president of the literature club with the short brown hair and emerald eyes. She carries a unique burden, a self-awareness that sets her apart and fuels a desperate desire for something more, something beyond the confines of her reality. Her actions will be the catalyst for much of the turmoil they face. The goddess paused, her gaze meeting Izuku's with intense focus. Your role, Izuku, is not to simply appear as a traditional hero and solve their problems with brute force. You must be a silent guardian, an unseen influence. You will need to observe, understand their individual struggles, and intervene subtly to guide them away from their darkest impulses. The pistol is a last resort, to be used only when absolutely necessary to prevent irreversible harm, particularly in Natsuki's case. You will retain one for all, but be mindful of its use. Overt displays of power could disrupt the delicate balance of their world and draw unwanted attention. Your vigilante suit will allow you to operate discreetly. Remember, your primary goal is to save their hearts and minds, not their bodies in the traditional heroic sense. Their world operates on different rules than yours, Izuku. Be prepared for things that may seem illogical or emotionally heightened. Your empathy and understanding will be your greatest assets. She then reiterated her previous point. And remember the name of the pistol, the judge, or Shinpan as it says, it is a tool of last resort and a constant reminder of the weight of your actions. With that final piece of crucial information imparted, the goddess gave the final wave of her hand, and the radiant light enveloped Izuku completely. The world around him dissolved into a swirling vortex of colors and sensations. The swirling colors subsided, replaced by the soft, blurry world of an infant. Sounds were muffled, and his limbs felt foreign and weak. Yet, within the chaos of new sensations, a flicker of recognition sparked as a bright shock of pinkish-orange hair came into his hazy view, accompanied by a warm, comforting presence and a gentle voice cooing words he couldn't yet understand. In a quiet residential neighborhood, we see a young boy with messy, dark green hair and bright, observant eyes, our reborn Izuku, wobbling slightly as he chases a bright red butterfly through a patch of dandelions. He's small for his age but carries a focused intensity in his gaze, a lingering echo of his past life. A cheerful voice calls out, "Izuku, wait up." He turns to see a girl with short, vibrant pinkish-orange hair bouncing towards him. Her smile is wide and infectious, her energy seemingly boundless. This is a young Sayori. "Sayori," Izuku calls back, his voice still carrying a hint of childish lilt but with an underlying maturity. He watches as she nearly trips over her own feet in her eagerness to reach him, a familiar warmth blossoming in his chest despite the strangeness of their new dynamic. "You're so fast." Sayori giggles, finally catching up, slightly out of breath. "What were you chasing?" Izuku points to where the butterfly had fluttered away. "Just a butterfly. It was really pretty." Even in this new, small body, his analytical mind noted the way Sayori's smile seemed genuine. Yet he couldn't shake the faint undercurrent of something else, a fleeting shadow behind her bright eyes that the goddess had warned him about. Sayori's attention shifts, and she spots a patch of colorful flowers. "Ooh, look, let's pick some for Mom." She grabs Izuku's small hand, her grip surprisingly firm. As they walk hand in hand, a comfortable silence settles between them. Izuku observes Sayori, trying to reconcile the cheerful child with the image of the lonely and depressed young woman the goddess had shown him. It was hard to see the darkness now, but he knew it was there, lurking beneath the surface. This time jump allows us to see the beginning of their childhood friendship, the foundation upon which his mission will be built. The two children reach a small, circular garden bursting with the vibrant colors and delicate fragrance of roses. The title of Izuku's past adventure flickers in his mind. Fallen Roses of the Hero, a poignant reminder of his sacrifice and his new purpose intertwined with these fragile blooms. Sayori beams, her eyes sparkling with delight. "Look, Izuku, aren't they beautiful?" She carefully plucks a vibrant red rose, its petals velvety soft. "Here," she says, offering it to him with a sweet smile. Izuku gently takes the rose, its thorns surprisingly sharp against his small fingers. He looks at its delicate beauty, a stark contrast to the brutal realities he once faced. A sense of protectiveness washes over him, a desire to shield this innocent world, and especially Sayori, from any harm. He spots a pale yellow rose, its petals just beginning to unfurl. He carefully picks it and offers it to Sayori. "Here, for you, Sayori." Her smile widens as she accepts the flower, bringing it close to her nose to inhale its sweet scent. "Thank you, Izuku. It's so pretty." She tucks it carefully behind her ear, her cheerful demeanor seemingly untroubled. But as they stand there, surrounded by the beauty and the thorns of the roses, a subtle thought crosses Izuku's mind. Roses, for all their beauty, eventually wilt and their petals fall. Could this foreshadow the fragility he was sent here to protect? Time skip. Several years later. The morning sun casts long shadows across the sidewalk as Izuku walks at a brisk pace, his mind already occupied with the day ahead. Even in this seemingly ordinary world, his heightened senses are alert, subtly scanning his surroundings. "Izuku. Hey, Izuku, wait up." The familiar cheerful voice cuts through his thoughts. He slows his pace and turns to see Sayori rushing to catch up, her pinkish-orange hair bouncing with each stride. Her usual bright smile is slightly strained, and she's breathing a little heavily. "Morning, Sayori," Izuku says, his tone a blend of his past maturity and the easygoing familiarity of a childhood friend. He notices the slight dishevelment of her uniform and the way her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes, a fleeting detail that doesn't escape his notice. "You always walk so fast." Sayori complains good-naturedly as she falls into step beside him. "It's like you're trying to leave me behind." "Sorry," Izuku replies, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. Just thinking about things. He doesn't elaborate, but the underlying intensity in his gaze hints at the weight of his secret mission. As they walk together, a comfortable silence settles between them, punctuated by Sayori's occasional cheerful remarks about the upcoming school day or a funny incident she remembers. Izuku listens attentively, observing her subtle shifts in mood, searching for any sign of the deeper sadness the goddess had warned him about. They approach the school gates, the usual hubbub of students swirling around them. Sayori suddenly stops, turning to Izuku with a slightly more serious expression. "Hey, you know that club I was telling you about? The literature club." Izuku nods, recalling Sayori's enthusiastic, if somewhat vague, descriptions of her new after-school activity. "Well," Sayori continues, her smile returning, "we really need more members. And Monica, the president, is super nice, and Yuri and Natsuki are, well, they're interesting. It would really mean a lot to me if you would just come and check it out today. Just for a little while." Her eyes, a bright hazel, hold a hopeful plea. This is it, Izuku realizes. This is his entry point. "Sure, I wouldn't mind," Izuku replies, a casual tone masking the underlying significance of this moment. "I mean, I like to read in my spare time anyways, so no harm no foul, right Sayori?" He offers her a small, reassuring smile. Sayori's face lights up, her usual boundless energy returning full force. "That's the spirit. You won't regret it, I promise. It's going to be so much fun." She gives him a quick, enthusiastic thumbs up. "See you later, Izuku." And with a skip in her step, she heads into the bustling school building, disappearing into the crowd. Izuku watches her go, his gaze lingering on the spot where she had just been. His mind races, analyzing the brief interaction. Sayori seemed genuinely happy about him joining, but that fleeting hint of sadness he had noticed earlier still lingered in his memory. He knew he had to tread carefully, observing and understanding before he could even begin to help. He takes a deep breath, the air filled with the sounds of school life. "The literature club, huh," he murmurs to himself, a sense of determination hardening his gaze. "All right, let's see what this is all about." With a newfound resolve, Izuku follows the flow of students into the school building, his senses on high alert, ready to step into the first act of his new, unforeseen heroism. We find Izuku standing just outside the door of his last class, a slightly worn textbook clutched in his hand. He leans against the cool wall, his gaze thoughtful as he reviews something in his mind, perhaps a detail from a lesson, or maybe a fleeting observation he made about one of the other students, his hero instincts always subtly at work. The sound of Druta footsteps and a cheerful voice breaks his concentration. "Izuku, there you are." Sayori appears, slightly breathless, her red bow a little askew. Her smile, however, is as bright and infectious as ever. "Hey, Sayori," Izuku greets her, a small, genuine smile gracing his lips. "School's almost out, huh?" "Yep, and you know what that means," Sayori exclaims, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Literature club time, are you ready to meet everyone?" There's a palpable excitement in her voice, a hopeful eagerness for him to join their little group. Izuku nods, a sense of both curiosity and apprehension stirring within him. He's about to step into the heart of the world the goddess tasked him with protecting. "Yeah, lead the way." Sayori beams, grabbing his arm and pulling him down the hallway with her characteristic enthusiasm. "You're going to love it, I just know it." As they walk, Izuku subtly steers the conversation in a more general direction, trying to glean information without being too obvious. "So, what kind of things do you guys usually do in the literature club?" he asks, keeping his tone light and curious. "Do you just, read books?" Sayori giggles. "Well, yeah, we read sometimes. But it's mostly about writing. Poems, mostly. It's really fun. We all share what we write." "Poems, huh?" Izuku muses. "Everyone writes different kinds." "Totally," Sayori confirms. "Yuri's are really deep and, metaphorical. Natsuki's are more cute and straightforward, but don't tell her I said that." She lowers her voice conspiratorially. "And Monica, well, Monica's poems are really amazing. They always make you think." Izuku nods, filing away this information. "Sounds interesting. Everyone gets along okay." He phrases the question casually, hoping to pick up on any potential interpersonal friction. Sayori's smile falters for a fraction of a second before returning to its usual brightness. Yeah, mostly. We're all really good friends. There's a slight emphasis on mostly that doesn't escape Izuku's notice. He decides not to press further for now. He's gleaned some initial insights into their personalities and the club's activities. He knows Yuri is introspective, Natsuki might be sensitive about her writing style, and Monika is highly regarded. The slight hesitation in Sayori's answer about everyone getting along suggests there might be underlying tensions he needs to be aware of. He realizes that trigger words might not be as simple as specific phrases, but more about the topics they are sensitive about or the way certain things are said. He'll need to rely on his observational skills and empathy to navigate their interactions without causing unnecessary distress. As they reach the door of the literature club, Izuku takes a final, subtle breath, preparing himself to meet the other members and begin his delicate mission. All right, give me just a moment, Sayori, Izuku says, reaching into his pocket for his phone. I just need to quickly check on something with my security cameras at home, make sure everything's all right. It's a believable enough excuse, a small habit born from a lifetime of vigilance, even in this seemingly peaceful world. You got it, Sayori replies cheerfully, already pushing the door open and stepping inside the clubroom. I'll let them know you're here. Izuku watches her go in, then pulls out his heavily modified phone. The interface is custom-built, allowing him quick access to his network of discrete cameras placed throughout his house. He swiftly checks each feed, his eyes scanning the familiar rooms. Everything appears to be in its place. Good, he mutters under his breath, a small knot of tension in his shoulders easing. Everything is still untouched. He turns off his phone, pockets it, and takes one final, deliberate deep breath. He's about to step into the heart of their world, to meet the individuals he's tasked with helping. With a quiet resolve, he opens the door and steps inside the literature club. His eyes widen slightly as he takes in the room. It's clearly a repurposed space, likely an unused meeting room that the literature club has claimed and personalized. Colorful posters adorn the walls, bookshelves are filled with a diverse collection of titles, and a large round table dominates the center of the room, surrounded by mismatched chairs. It has a cozy, lived-in feel, a stark contrast to the sterile hallways outside. Whoa, Izuku says softly, a genuine sense of surprise in his voice as he steps fully into the room. It's more vibrant and welcoming than he had pictured. There he is, girls. Sayori announces, turning towards Izuku with a wide, triumphant grin. This is my childhood friend, Izuku. The one I was telling you about. All eyes in the room turn to Izuku. Yuri offers a shy nod from her corner, still clutching her book. Natsuki scoffs lightly but gives him a quick, almost imperceptible glance. And Monika steps forward, her emerald eyes sparkling with a warm, welcoming smile. Welcome to the literature club, Izuku, Monika says, her voice friendly and confident. We're so happy you decided to join us. I told you he liked reading. He has a ton of books in his room. Sayori chimes in enthusiastically, her earlier slight awkwardness completely gone. Oh, really? Monika says, her smile widening slightly, a hint of intrigue in her emerald eyes. She turns her attention to Izuku, her expression open and welcoming. Yeah, Sayori confirms, pulling out her phone. Look, she shows the screen to Yuri and Natsuki, who both lean in for a quick peek. He mainly reads cheesy romance novels, manga, horror, mystery, and fantasy. He has an entire shelf dedicated to a manga he finished when he was 8. Shoki Manzu, I think was its name, can't quite remember, not a big fan of manga myself. As Sayori shares this slightly embarrassing tidbit, Izuku lets out a good-natured sigh, rubbing his temples with a wry smile. It's just like Sayori to air his slightly less heroic reading tastes. Monika chuckles softly. Well, that's quite a variety. It sounds like you have diverse interests, Izuku. Her gaze meets his, and there's a genuine warmth in her tone. That's exactly the kind of open-mindedness we appreciate in the literature club. Yuri glances up from Sayori's phone, her violet eyes lingering on Izuku for a moment before she quickly looks back down, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Welcome, she murmurs softly, her voice barely audible. Natsuki, however, lets out a small, HMPH. And turns away slightly, crossing her arms again. Romance novels. Seriously. That's so fluffy. But there's a hint of curiosity in her averted gaze, and Izuku notices she didn't completely dismiss his manga collection. Izuku offers a polite smile to Monika. Thanks, Monika. Sayori can be a bit enthusiastic about my hobbies. He glances at Sayori with an affectionate eye roll, which she returns with a playful grin. He then turns his attention to Yuri and Natsuki, trying to gauge their reactions. Okay everyone, Monika announces, clapping her hands together gently to get their attention. Today, I have a little assignment for us. Tonight, I'd like each of you to write 4 poems. Each poem needs to have a title and be dedicated to one of the other club members. Feel free to read, work on other things, or just relax until inspiration strikes. As the girls begin to settle into their own activities, a determined glint enters Izuku's eyes. Huh, he thinks to himself, his mind already racing. Okay, time to do what I do best. Analyze everyone around me and find a way to solve their mental turmoil so they lead happy lives. The goddess's warnings and the fleeting glimpses of their inner struggles weigh heavily on him. He quietly walks over to a less occupied corner of the room and sits down on the floor, his back against the wall. From this vantage point, he has a clear view of each of the girls. His gaze becomes intensely analytical, his eyes subtly scanning their body language, their expressions, and their interactions. He observes the way Sayori's cheerful facade occasionally slips, revealing a hint of underlying sadness. He notes Yuri's intense focus on her book, a possible form of escapism, and the slight tremor in her hands as she turns a page. He watches Natsuki's defensive posture and the sharp tone she uses when she speaks, contrasting with the glimpses of vulnerability in her eyes. And he studies Monika, her confident smile and seemingly composed demeanor, searching for any cracks in her perfect facade, any hint of the desperate desire for something more the goddess had mentioned. His analytical gaze is so subtle, so practiced from years of observing quirks and battle strategies, that none of the girls seem to notice it, not even the perceptive Monika, who, despite her self-awareness, doesn't realize the depth of Izuku's scrutiny and the true nature of his presence. He is the unseen hero, beginning his work in the quiet corners of their seemingly normal world. An hour passes within the cozy confines of the literature club. The girls are lost in their own worlds, some scribbling furiously in notebooks, others quietly reading or lost in thought. Izuku remains in his corner, his analytical gaze occasionally shifting between them, piecing together the subtle clues he observes. He notices the way Sayori sometimes forces a laugh after a seemingly innocuous comment, the slight defensiveness in Natsuki's tone when Yuri offers a suggestion about her writing, the almost unnerving intensity with which Yuri immerses herself in her book, and the way Monika's eyes sometimes drift off, as if she's contemplating something beyond the present moment. As the afternoon light begins to fade, Monika announces that the club meeting is over for the day. The girls gather their belongings, a comfortable camaraderie filling the room despite the underlying tensions Izuku has sensed. Sayori walks with Izuku towards their homes, the familiar rhythm of their footsteps a comforting sound. The usual cheerful chatter is slightly subdued today, perhaps due to the introspective nature of the poem assignment. They reach the familiar fork in the road where their paths diverge. Sayori stops, turning to face Izuku. A soft, genuine smile graces her lips, a smile that reaches her eyes in a way he hasn't seen all afternoon. She steps forward and gives him a warm, heartfelt hug, surprising him slightly. "Thank you, Izuku," she murmurs, her voice a little muffled against his shoulder. "It really meant a lot to me that you joined the club today." Izuku returns the hug, a sense of protectiveness welling up within him. He can feel the fragility beneath her cheerful exterior, the unspoken weight she carries. "Of course, Sayori," he says gently. "I'm glad I did." She pulls back, her smile a little brighter now. "See you tomorrow." "Yeah," Izuku confirms, nodding. "See you tomorrow." As Sayori turns and heads towards her house, Izuku watches her go, his mind already replaying the events of the afternoon. The poem assignment, Monika's subtle knowingness, the individual struggles he glimpsed, it all reinforces the urgency of his mission. He continues his walk home, the weight of the goddess's task settling upon him. He has taken the first step, entered their world, and begun his observation. Now comes the difficult part. Understanding the depths of their pain and finding a way to guide them towards their own happiness, without revealing his true purpose or shattering the delicate reality they inhabit. Once Izuku gets home, he goes to his room and writes 4 poems. 4. Sayori, sunshine through clouds, your laughter, a melody so bright, chasing away the darkest night. But sometimes, a cloud drifts in between, a silent sorrow, rarely seen. May sunshine always find its way to chase those hidden blues away. 4. Yuri, the weight of pages, in realms of ink, you find your peace, where stories hold a sweet release. But be not lost in endless lore, lest the real world you ignore. May balance guide your thoughtful hand, between the book and shifting sand. 4. Nitsuki, hidden sweetness, a prickly shell, a voice so keen, a fighter's spirit, fiercely seen. But underneath, a tender heart, longing for kindness, a brand new start. May gentle hands your spirit find, and leave the harshness far behind. 4. Monica, the guiding emerald, your gaze is sharp, your words ring true, leading the way for me and you. But in your depths, what secrets lie? A hidden yearning in your eye. May true fulfillment grace your way, beyond the dawn of every day. Well, that should be it, now to shower and get some much needed rest. Izuku said. The world around Izuku dissolved into a chaotic swirl of distorted colors and fragmented images. Familiar faces flickered in and out of focus, Sayori's forced smile stretching into something unsettling, Yuri's eyes widening with an almost manic intensity, Natsuki's angry scowl twisting into a mask of despair. But it was Monica who dominated the terrifying landscape of his dream. Her emerald eyes, usually so bright and welcoming, now glowed with an eerie, knowing light. She wasn't interacting with the other girls, but rather, she seemed to be looking directly at Izuku, even though he felt like an unseen observer within the nightmare. Her voice, when it came, wasn't the warm, confident tone he had heard in the clubroom. Instead, it was distorted, echoing as if from a great distance, yet chillingly clear. You think you can help them? She seemed to say, her lips not moving in sync with the words. You think you can change what is already written? The dream shifted, and Izuku found himself standing in a distorted version of the literature club. The posters on the walls were torn and faded, the bookshelves were empty, and the air was thick with a sense of decay. Monica stood at the center of the room, her form flickering in and out of existence. They are not real, you know, her voice echoed again, laced with a strange mix of sadness and defiance. None of this is real. And you are just another anomaly. Suddenly, the other girls appeared around her, their movements jerky and unnatural, like puppets on broken strings. Their eyes were blank, their smiles fixed and unsettling. Monica reached out a hand towards Izuku, her gaze piercing. You cannot save them from a story that has already begun. And you cannot save me from knowing the truth. Izuku tried to speak, to reach out, but he felt paralyzed, trapped within the horrifying logic of the dream. The sense of Monica's self-awareness, the feeling that she knew more than she let on, was palpable and deeply disturbing. He jolted awake, his heart pounding in his chest, a cold sweat clinging to his skin. The familiar surroundings of his room slowly came into focus, but the lingering unease from the nightmare remained. What was that? He whispered, his mind still reeling from the unsettling encounter. Monica's words, even in a dream, had carried a chilling weight. The idea that she might be aware of their reality in a way the others weren't, and that she might see him as an anomaly, sent a shiver down his spine. The dream served as a stark reminder that his mission might be far more complex and dangerous than he initially anticipated. The mental turmoil of these girls might have layers he hasn't even begun to uncover, and Monica could be at the center of it all. The lingering dread from the nightmare clung to Izuku as he sat up in bed, his heart still hammering against his ribs. Monica's unsettling words echoed in his mind, the implication of her self-awareness a chilling possibility. I might have to put her down. The thought, stark and brutal, flashed through his mind, a grim echo of the goddess's instructions about Natsuki, now twisted and directed towards Monica. He recoiled from the idea, shaking his head vehemently. But I don't know that yet. Snap out of it, Izuku. He slapped his cheeks lightly, trying to dispel the lingering darkness of the dream. This wasn't the hero he wanted to be. He glanced at his alarm clock. 4:30 a.m. Well, shit, he muttered, a wave of exhaustion washing over him despite the adrenaline. Nice to know, 6 hours of sleep, less than normal. The disturbing dream had stolen precious rest, leaving him feeling more vulnerable and on edge. He got out of bed, the cool floorboards a stark contrast to the lingering heat of the nightmare. As he went through his morning routine, his mind kept returning to Monika's words. Was she truly aware of something the others weren't? And if so, what did that mean for his mission? The goddess had warned him that their world operated on different rules. Could Monika's self-awareness be part of that? Was she the key to understanding the underlying issues plaguing the literature club? Despite the unsettling nature of the dream, Izuku knew he couldn't let it paralyze him. He still had a responsibility to Sayori, Yuri, and Natsuki. He needed to observe, to understand, and to help them without resorting to the drastic measures the goddess had hinted at, especially not based on a nightmare. As he prepared for school, a new resolve hardened his gaze. He would be more observant today, paying closer attention to Monika's interactions and her subtle cues. He needed to understand the potential threat she might represent, not to eliminate her preemptively, but to find a way to help all four of them. The early morning air is still cool as Izuku stands near their usual meeting spot, the unsettling remnants of his nightmare still lingering in the back of his mind. He's more alert than usual, his senses subtly scanning his surroundings. A moment later, Sayori approaches, her usual cheerful skip in her step. As she gets closer, a playful glint enters her eyes, and she reaches out, gently poking Izuku's cheek. "Boop," she says with a bright smile. "Whoa," Izuku yelps, completely caught off guard. Years of ingrained reflexes kick in, and he instinctively jumps back, momentarily adopting a loose karate-style fighting stance, his eyes wide with surprise. "Sorry," Sayori says quickly, her hands flying up in a gesture of apology, her smile faltering slightly at his reaction. "I didn't mean to scare you. You're fine," Izuku starts, trying to calm his racing heart and shake off the lingering tension from his dream. But just as he's about to reassure her, the world around Sayori seems to twist and distort. The cheerful morning light filtering through the trees seems to dim, replaced by a stark, horrifying vision superimposed over reality. For a split second, the vibrant image of Sayori standing beneath the light pole is replaced by a gruesome illusion. Sayori, her body limp, hanging from a rope tied to the very same light pole. Her face is pale and still, her eyes lifeless. The illusion vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving the normal morning scene intact. But the horrifying image sears itself into Izuku's mind, a visceral jolt that sends a wave of nausea crashing over him. He whirls away from Sayori, his hands flying to his mouth as he vomits onto the nearby grass, the bile burning his throat. The goddess's words about preventing their destruction, the darkness surrounding them, it all slams into him with brutal force. The nightmare, the illusion, it feels like a terrifying confirmation of the danger they are all in, especially Sayori. Sayori's voice, filled with alarm and confusion, reaches him. "Izuku, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "Fine," Izuku manages to say, his voice still a little shaky as he straightens up, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He avoids looking directly at Sayori, his gaze fixed on the ground where he had just been sick. "Just remembered I ate burnt eggs last night. Guess they didn't sit well." It's a weak excuse, and he can feel Sayori's concerned gaze on him, but he can't bring himself to speak of the horrifying illusion. "Yikes," Sayori says, her brow furrowed with concern. "That must have sucked. You okay to walk to school?" She takes a tentative step towards him, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced with worry. Izuku takes a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. The image of the illusion is still vivid in his mind, a terrifying premonition. He needs to appear normal, to not alarm Sayori. Yeah, I'm okay," he says, forcing a weak smile. "Just a bad taste in my mouth. Let's go." As they walk towards school, Izuku keeps a close eye on Sayori, his senses on high alert. He subtly scans their surroundings, half expecting the horrifying illusion to reappear. The vibrant world around them now feels fragile, tainted by the darkness he briefly glimpsed. He can't shake the feeling that something is terribly wrong, and that Sayori might be in more immediate danger than he initially realized. The casual conversation they try to maintain feels strained, Izuku's mind preoccupied with the terrifying vision and the implications of Monika's words in his dream. He wonders if the illusion was a warning, a glimpse of a potential future, or something else entirely. They arrive at school, the usual bustle of students a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within him. Sayori gives him a concerned look before heading off to her own locker. Izuku watches her go, a heavy weight settling in his chest. He needs to figure out what's happening, and he needs to protect them all. During lunch, Izuku spots Monika sitting alone at a table in the bustling cafeteria, a book open in front of her, though her gaze seems distant. He approaches her, a polite but serious expression on his face. "Hey, Monika," he says, his voice calm but carrying a note of urgency. "Can we talk for a moment?" Monika looks up, her emerald eyes widening slightly in surprise. A warm smile quickly spreads across her face. "Sure, Izuku, what's on your mind?" "Hold on," she adds with a playful wink, tilting her head, "you're not trying to impress me with a deep and meaningful conversation already, are you?" Izuku manages a small, polite smile in return, but his gaze remains steady. "No, nothing like that. But yesterday, during the club meeting, I noticed your eyes wander off a couple of times, like you were preoccupied. Something seemed to steal your attention. Was everything all right?" He tries to keep his tone casual, as if just making polite conversation, but his internal focus is sharp. He's looking for any hint of the self-awareness from his dream. Monika's smile falters for just a fraction of a second, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Oh no." She thinks quickly, a sudden spike of anxiety. "He might be more perceptive than I thought. Could he be figuring me out already?" Aloud, she says, her voice smooth and even, "Oh, that. Nothing to worry about at all. You know how it is, sometimes your mind just drifts. But now that you mention it," she adds, her smile returning, a touch too bright, "I thought I saw a tiny spider web in the corner of the ceiling. It was bothering me a little. And after you guys left, I did find it and, being the responsible club president, I rid the clubroom of its presence. Didn't want our lovely space getting all dusty, you know." She chuckles lightly, her gaze direct and seemingly open. Izuku studies her carefully, his analytical mind dissecting her words and body language. Her explanation is plausible, delivered with her usual confidence. But he can't shake the feeling that there was a brief moment of hesitation, a flicker in her eyes that suggested more than just a passing distraction. Was it paranoia from his nightmare? Or was Monika truly hiding something? "A spider web, huh?" Izuku repeats slowly, his eyes still searching hers. "Well, good on you for taking care of it. Wouldn't want any unwanted guests in the club." He lets the topic drop for now, not wanting to push too hard this early. But the seed of suspicion has been planted, and his resolve to understand Monika's true nature has strengthened. "So," Izuku says, shifting his tone back to casual politeness, "how are you feeling about the poem assignment for tonight? Got any ideas brewing?" He wants to observe her in a more relaxed setting, see if he can pick up any other subtle cues. Good, Monika says, a touch of relief coloring her tone. "It's always nice to be prepared. Anyways, do you have your poems ready for today's meeting?" She smoothly steers the conversation back to the club's activities, her smile returning to its usual confident warmth. "Yeah, they're right here in my bag, all ready to be shown to everyone," Izuku replies, patting his backpack. As he speaks, he subtly observes Monika's eyes. He catches that fleeting glint, the almost imperceptible shift in her expression, a flicker of relief at having seemingly deflected his earlier questions. It's a look he recognizes, a look that speaks of someone who feels they've narrowly avoided exposure. His internal alarm bells ring louder. Definitely onto something, Izuku thinks, his gaze hardening slightly beneath the veneer of polite interest. That relief was too palpable. Her explanation about the spider web felt rehearsed. A plan begins to form in his mind. He can't directly confront Monika without more concrete evidence. He needs to understand the nature of her self-awareness and what she might be hiding. The terrifying illusion of Sayori still haunts him, fueling his urgency. "Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone came up with," Izuku says, offering Monika a seemingly casual smile. It's always interesting to see everyone's different styles. His mind, however, is already working on his evening. He would need to slip out unnoticed after school, retrieve his vigilante suit, and discreetly follow Monica. He needed to see where she went, who she met, or what she did when she thought no one was watching. Tonight, the unseen hero would become a silent observer in the shadows, hoping to uncover the truth behind Monica's carefully constructed facade and the darkness that seemed to be encroaching on the literature club. At the meeting, the atmosphere in the literature club is filled with a mix of nervous anticipation and excitement as they prepare to share their poems. Izuku, still subtly observing everyone, hands his poem titled, "The Weight of Pages," to Yuri. Yuri takes the paper with a delicate touch, her violet eyes scanning the words. As she reads aloud, her voice is soft and hesitant at first, but gains a touch more confidence as she progresses through the lines. The weight of pages. In realms of ink, you find your peace. Where stories hold a sweet release. But be not lost in endless lore, lest the real world you ignore may balance guide your thoughtful hand between the book and shifting sand. As Yuri finishes, a faint blush creeps up her neck and onto her cheeks. She lowers the paper slightly, her gaze flicking up to meet Izuku's for a brief moment before darting back down to the poem. A small, almost imperceptible smile touches her lips. The other girls react with surprise and admiration. Sayori claps her hands together enthusiastically. "Wow, Izuku, that was really good. You have a way with words." Natsuki, who had been looking away with a characteristic pout, glances over with a grudgingly impressed expression. HMPH. It's not bad. For a beginner. Monica's smile is warm and genuine. "That was lovely, Izuku. You captured Yuri's passion for reading beautifully, but also offered a thoughtful sentiment. We might have a natural poet in our midst." Her gaze lingers on him for a moment, a hint of something unreadable in her eyes. Izuku offers a modest smile, trying to gauge Yuri's reaction more closely. The slight blush and the small smile tell him that his words resonated with her, perhaps even touched on a deeper aspect of her personality. It reinforces his initial assessment of her potential to become too lost in her escapism. The attention now shifts to the remaining poems. Sayori is practically bouncing with anticipation to hear what Izuku wrote for her, and Natsuki, despite her tsundere-like demeanor, seems equally curious. Monica's gaze is steady and observant, as if she's trying to decipher more than just the words on the page. The atmosphere in the room shifts as the last of the club members trickle out, leaving only Izuku and Monica behind. Monica turns to him, her usual confident smile replaced by a look of earnest pleading. "Izuku, can we talk?" she asks, her voice softer, more vulnerable than he's heard before. "Sure," Izuku replies, his suspicion immediately piqued. Her change in demeanor is sudden and unsettling. Once the door clicks shut behind the last departing member, Monica turns to face him fully. Her emerald eyes are wide, filled with a desperate urgency. "Izuku," she says, her voice barely above a whisper, "I know you know. You know about my self-awareness. So please, don't play coy with me." What gave it away? Izuku's mind races. This is happening much faster than he anticipated. He had planned to observe, to gather evidence, but Monica is confronting him directly. He decides to stick to his initial strategy, feigning ignorance. What's going on, Monica?" he asks, trying his best to project an air of confusion and innocence. He widens his eyes slightly and adopts a bewildered expression, hoping his, "What are you talking about?" facade is convincing. Monica's pleading gaze intensifies. "Please, Izuku, I saw the way you looked at me yesterday, the way you phrased your question during lunch. And your poem, The Guiding Emerald, it felt different. Like you saw something more." She takes a step closer, her voice trembling slightly. "I know this sounds crazy, but you need to understand. This isn't just a game to me." The directness of her confession catches Izuku off guard. He had expected a more subtle approach, a slow unraveling of her secrets. Now, he's faced with a direct accusation, a desperate plea for understanding. Izuku, seeing the raw desperation in Monica's eyes and realizing the futility of maintaining his facade, lets out a frustrated sigh. The weight of his mission and the unsettling events of the morning finally break through his carefully constructed wall of ignorance. "Look, Monica," he says, his voice tinged with a weary anger, "I was given a job. A job to help you girls. So whatever it is you're doing, giving me nightmares and those horrifying illusions. You need to make it stop. Monika's eyes widen in genuine shock and confusion. Nightmares. Illusions. Izuku, I can't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. Her brow furrows, and she looks genuinely distressed. That means, she whispers, her voice laced with a sudden fear, her gaze meeting Izuku's with dawning realization as they spoke in Yujin, something else is happening. Something is trying to breach our sanity. The revelation hangs heavy in the air. Izuku's anger dissipates, replaced by a chilling understanding. If Monika wasn't behind the nightmares and illusions, then there was another force at play, one that could be far more dangerous and insidious than he had imagined. Monika takes a step back, her usual composure completely shattered. But what could it be? I thought I was the only one who knew. Her voice trails off, filled with a mixture of fear and confusion. Izuku's mind races, connecting the pieces. The goddess's warning about their world operating on different rules, Monika's self-awareness, the terrifying illusion of Sayori, it all points to a reality far more fragile and manipulated than he initially understood. Monika, Izuku says, his voice firm despite the unease churning within him, tell me everything. Everything you know about being self-aware, about things not being just a game. We don't have time for secrets anymore. Whatever is happening, we need to face it together. Monika looks at him, her eyes searching his, trying to gauge his sincerity. The anger she had initially seen has been replaced by a determined resolve. Slowly, hesitantly, she begins to speak, the truth of her existence and the strange nature of their world spilling forth. While I am as old as I look, Monika begins, her voice hushed, I gained self-awareness when I was 5. It was gradual at first, just a feeling that things weren't quite right, that there was more to everything than what I was experiencing. Over time, it became clearer, the feeling of being trapped, of following predetermined paths. So, this, whatever it is that's causing you nightmares and illusions, it might revolve around this. But what could it be? Her brow is furrowed with worry and confusion. Monika, look, Izuku says, his mind already working, piecing together this new information with the terrifying visions he experienced. Meet me at my house tonight at 10 p.m. We can talk this over properly, somewhere private where we won't be interrupted. Monika hesitates for a moment, a flicker of concern in her eyes. Wait, you live alone? She asks. A shadow of sadness crosses Izuku's face. Yeah, he replies, his voice softening. My mother, she died when I turned 17. Oh, Monika says softly, her expression shifting to one of sympathy. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I didn't know. It's all right, he says, waving it off gently. Guess I'll see you then. Monika nods, a thoughtful expression on her face. She unlocks the door and starts to leave, but a sudden, sharp crack echoes through the room. She turns back, startled, to see Izuku standing near a security camera mounted in the corner. A thin, black tendril, like something out of a nightmare, retracts into his sleeve as the camera falls to the ground in a shower of dust and broken plastic. What was that? Monika asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination as she stared at the spot where the security camera had been. Izuku turns back to her, his expression serious. That, he says, his voice low and steady, is something called Blackwhip. It's a part of my quirk. And Monika, he emphasizes, his gaze direct and unwavering, you cannot tell anyone what you just saw. Understand? The urgency in his tone underscores the importance of his secret. Monika nods quickly, her eyes still wide. Oh okay, she stammers, the fear in her voice palpable. The casual atmosphere of the literature club has been shattered, replaced by an undercurrent of the unknown and potentially dangerous. Good, Izuku says, his gaze softening slightly as he sees her fear. He offers a small, reassuring nod before turning and leaving the clubroom, the weight of his secrets and his mission pressing down on him. Monika stands frozen for a moment, her mind reeling. The boy she thought she was getting to know, the one who wrote surprisingly insightful poems, just displayed a power that seemed to defy the very reality she was beginning to question. Blackwhip, a quirk, in their world, it didn't make sense, yet she had seen it with her own eyes. As the shock begins to subside, a different kind of awareness dawns on her. This wasn't just about her self-awareness anymore. Izuku. He was different too. He was hiding something significant. And despite the fear that still lingered, a faint blush dusted her cheeks. The mystery surrounding him had just deepened, adding another layer of intrigue to the already strange circumstances. Who was he? She thought, her mind racing with possibilities. Later that day at Izuku's house, 10 p.m. The dimly lit living room of Izuku's house has a Spartan feel, functional but not overly decorated. He sits in a worn leather armchair, the only source of direct light illuminating the metallic sheen of the pistol in his hands. The rhythmic motions of cleaning the judge are precise and practiced, a stark contrast to the gentle nature he usually projects. A knock echoes from the front door. Without looking up, Izuku calls out, his voice calm but firm, "Come in, Monica." The door creaks open hesitantly, and Monica steps inside. Her eyes widen, and she takes an immediate step back, her hand flying to her mouth as she takes in the sight of the firearm in Izuku's hands. The polished metal gleams ominously in the soft light. Why do you have a gun?" she asks, her voice a mixture of shock and fear. The image of the black tendril crushing the security camera flashes through her mind, adding another layer of unease to this unexpected display. Izuku continues to clean the barrel of the pistol, his movements unhurried. He finally looks up, his green eyes meeting hers with a serious intensity. "It was given to me," he says, his tone casual yet carrying an undeniable weight, "by the goddess who tasked me with saving the four of you." Monica stares at him, her initial fear slowly morphing into confusion and a dawning sense of the gravity of the situation. "Why?" she asks again, the single word laden with unspoken questions. Izuku's gaze hardens slightly, a flicker of anger in his eyes. He finally sets the pistol down on a nearby table, the click echoing in the quiet room. "Natsuki's father," he says, the simple words laced with a venomous undercurrent that sends a shiver down Monica's spine. The casual tone is gone, replaced by a chilling resolve. The weight of his mission, and the darkness he's been tasked with confronting, is palpable in the small room. "But why did she tell you to kill Natsuki's father?" Monica asks, her voice filled with disbelief and a hint of horror. The idea of such a drastic measure clashes sharply with the seemingly ordinary world they inhabit. Izuku continues to meticulously clean the magazine of the pistol, his movements precise. "Because," he says, his tone flat and devoid of emotion, "her father abuses her. To no end. The goddess showed me, it's brutal." "But still," Monica persists, her brow furrowed, "what good do you get out of it? Why would you agree to something like that?" Izuku finally looks up, his normal calm demeanor returning, the earlier anger replaced by a quiet resolve. "None," he states simply. "However," he adds, his gaze softening slightly, "my intention is to shoot him in the leg. Incapacitate him. Let the authorities deal with the rest." He sets the magazine down and reaches for a sleek, black remote control lying on the coffee table. As his fingers close around the remote, he presses the power button. The single, soft lamp in the corner of the room flickers and dies, plunging the living room into near darkness. Then, with a soft hum, a series of lights embedded in the walls, concealed behind panels, and integrated into furniture begin to illuminate the space. The transformation is subtle but significant, revealing a network of advanced technology seamlessly integrated into the room's design. Holographic displays flicker to life on transparent surfaces, showing schematics and data streams. Small, almost invisible drones hum quietly in the corners. Monica's jaw drops in astonishment. "Wow," she breathes, her fear momentarily forgotten in the face of this unexpected display of technological sophistication. The ordinary living room has suddenly become something far more complex and intriguing. "Cool, I know," Izuku says, a hint of pride in his voice before he gestures towards a nearby couch. "But sit down, Monica. I told you to come here so we could actually talk about what's going on." Monica, still slightly awestruck by the sudden reveal of Izuku's hidden tech, slowly sits down on the edge of the couch, her eyes darting around the room, taking in the holographic displays and the subtle hum of the hidden devices. "So," she begins, her voice filled with curiosity, "what is all of this?" She gestures vaguely around the room. "Had to have a hobby other than reading that Sayori doesn't know about," Izuku replies with a wry smile. "So that is why all of this is a thing. Keeps me occupied." He pauses, his expression turning serious again. But now, we need to discuss what might be our problem. This, something, that's causing me nightmares and, if your reaction was genuine, something you haven't experienced directly. Why would I lie to you, Izuku? Monica asks, her voice earnest and slightly trembling. I have no need to. What you just showed me, it scares me. The idea that something else is at play here, something I can't control. So much for being an unseen hero. Izuku mutters under his breath, a hint of self-deprecating humor in his tone, acknowledging the irony of his current situation. Okay, Monica says, leaning forward slightly, her initial fear giving way to a focused concern. You said you saw an illusion, yes. Yes, Izuku confirms, his expression grim. What did you see inside the illusion? Monica asks, her voice gentle but insistent. Izuku closes his eyes for a brief moment, the horrifying image flashing behind his eyelids. He swallows hard, fighting back the nausea. I saw Sayori. He starts, his voice catching slightly as he tries to suppress the urge to gag. He takes another deep breath before continuing, limp and hanging from the light pole she was standing under this morning. He covers his mouth with his hand, his knuckles white, as if trying to physically block the gruesome image from his mind. The memory is still raw and visceral. Yikes, Monica says softly, her expression a mixture of concern and sympathy. You sure you're all right, Izuku? That sounds awful. Yeah, I'll be fine, Izuku replies, his tone becoming more even, though a shadow of the memory still lingers in his eyes. The image is still raw, though it was pretty vivid. He pushes himself to his feet. Anyways, I'm going to make dinner. Want something? He heads towards what appears to be a surprisingly well-equipped kitchen tucked away behind one of the holographic displays. Oh, sure, Monica says, her earlier fear receding slightly as the normalcy of the situation returns. Can you make katsudon? It's my favorite. She watches him move around the kitchen with a newfound curiosity. Izuku pauses, a small smile spreading across his face. Katsudon, huh? He opens the refrigerator, revealing a variety of fresh ingredients. Well, look at that. So we do have something in common. He chuckles softly as he begins to gather the necessary items to prepare their meal. The shared favorite dish creates a small, unexpected moment of connection amidst the unsettling revelations of the evening. The clinking of chopsticks against ceramic bowls is the primary sound for a few moments as Izuku and Monica eat in comfortable silence. The katsudon is simple but hearty, and for a brief time, the weight of their earlier discussion seems to lift. Monica takes a thoughtful bite, her gaze drifting around Izuku's living room, still taking in the subtle hints of advanced technology. You know, she says softly, breaking the silence, for someone who pretends to be just a normal bookworm, you have a lot of secrets, Izuku. There's a hint of amusement in her voice, but also a lingering curiosity. Izuku sets his bowl down, his appetite seemingly waning. This isn't exactly something I can just bring up in casual conversation, Monica. Hey, by the way, a goddess from another dimension tasked me with saving you and your friends from some unknown entity that might be messing with your heads. He raises an eyebrow. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. Monica chuckles lightly. Fair point. But still, a goddess. And you have superpowers. She gestures towards where the black whip tendril had emerged. That's a lot to take in. You being self-aware in what's supposed to be our reality is also a lot to take in, Izuku counters gently. But here we are. He picks up his bowl again, swirling the remaining rice and pork cutlet. The goddess, she didn't give me all the answers. Just the mission. Protect the four of you from paths that lead to your destruction. It's like, she knows something about the fabric of our world that we don't. Monica's expression turns even more troubled. That makes it even worse, doesn't it? If this isn't just our normal lives, if there's something else influencing things, something that could cause those nightmares and illusions. Exactly, Izuku says, setting his bowl down again with a decisive clink. It's like, there are layers to what we perceive as reality. Your self-awareness, the goddess's intervention, these nightmares, they all point to something beyond the ordinary. Monica leans forward, her emerald eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. So, what do we do? If there's something out there that can manipulate our minds, our very perceptions, how can we fight that? Izuku's gaze hardens. That's what I need to figure out. The goddess gave me one for all and all of its other powers for a reason. I'm strong, Monica, stronger than anyone in this world likely realizes. But this isn't a villain I can just punch. This feels different, more insidious. He gestures towards the area where he used Black Whip earlier. That's a manifestation of my power. It's tied to my emotions, my will. The stronger my resolve, the more potent it becomes. But against something that can warp reality itself. He trails off, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Monica reaches across the small table, her hand hovering near his. We'll figure it out, she says, her voice surprisingly firm. I've been living with this feeling of something being off for years. Knowing I'm not alone in this, knowing there's someone who wants to help, it gives me hope. Her fingers brush against his briefly before she pulls her hand back. But the others, Monica continues, her brow furrowing with worry. Sayori, Yuri, Natsuki, are they in danger too? Are they experiencing these breaches in reality? Izuku nods grimly. The goddess showed me glimpses. Their paths lead to destruction, she said. Their inner turmoil, it's being amplified, twisted. The illusion of Sayori, I think that was a taste of what could happen if things go wrong. The weight of their responsibility settles heavily in the room. They are two individuals, burdened with knowledge of a hidden reality and the looming threat to their friends. The comfortable normalcy of dinner has been replaced by a shared sense of urgency and the daunting task ahead. But still, Monica asks, her voice laced with anxiety, what if that does happen? What if this entity is too strong? What if you can't stop it? The fear of the unknown is evident in her eyes. Izuku looks at her, his expression firm and resolute. It won't, he says with a conviction that surprises even himself. I can assure you of that, Monica. I won't let whatever this has hurt any of you. He pauses, his gaze softening slightly as he focuses on her. However, he continues, his tone more serious, your safety, Monica, that is something I cannot promise to keep absolutely safe. You are, as you said, an entire entity, a being aware of things the others aren't. That makes you a potential target, someone this entity might try to silence or manipulate. He leans forward slightly, so please, Monica, for your own sake, keep your self-awareness on the down low. Don't reveal too much to the others, not yet. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we risk exposing you further. The weight of his warning hangs in the air, underscoring the delicate and dangerous situation they are in. The others don't know of my self-awareness, Izuku, Monica confirms, her voice firm. And I don't plan to let them, or anyone other than you, know. It's too risky. Good, Izuku nods, a sense of relief washing over him. That's one less thing to worry about for now. He glances at the clock on one of the holographic displays. Wow, it's almost 11:45 already. Look, I have a spare room upstairs if you don't want to walk home this late. It's no trouble at all. Oh, Monica says, a thoughtful expression on her face. That's actually really nice of you, Izuku. Yeah, I think I will. I mean, I do have a spare set of the school uniform in my bag, which, by the way, is sitting right there on your couch. She gestures towards her backpack. Also, she adds, her curiosity piqued, why is your leather chair so worn? She eyes the armchair he had been sitting in earlier. Izuku follows her gaze to the well-loved chair and a small smile touches his lips. Ah, that old thing. Well, Sayori wasn't exaggerating. I do read a lot, but I don't usually sit in my room to do it. I prefer that chair, by the lamp over there. He gestures to a floor lamp in the corner, like some kind of old person, lost in a good book. It's comfortable. Been with me for a while. He lets out a light-hearted laugh. The shared moment of comfort and his admission about his reading habits creates a brief sense of normalcy after the intense conversation. So, how old is your soul then? So you remember everything from your past? Monica asked. Yes I do. Izuku said. Monica's emerald eyes widen slightly, a flicker of understanding and perhaps a touch of awe in their depths. So, you remember everything? She asks softly, the weight of his words sinking in. The implications of his statement are profound, suggesting a past life, a different self. Izuku nods slowly, his gaze distant for a moment, as if looking back across a vast expanse of time and experience. Yes, he confirms, his voice low. I remember my previous life. The battles, the sacrifices, the person I was. You're right, that Izuku Midoriya wouldn't have even considered touching a gun, let alone wielding one. This new life, this mission, it's changed things. He focuses back on Monica, his gaze direct. So, to answer your question, depending on which soul you're referring to, my current self, the one inhabiting this 18-year-old body, is 18. But the memories, the experiences, the core of who I am, that carries the weight of 17 years from another life entirely. They are intertwined, but distinct. The revelation hangs in the air between them, adding another layer of complexity to Izuku's already mysterious presence. Monica looks at him with a newfound sense of wonder and a deeper understanding of the burden he carries. The unseen hero is far more than he initially seemed. All right, I'm going to take a shower and try to wash off some of this weirdness, Izuku says, standing up from the couch. I'll call you once I'm out, and we can figure out where you'll be sleeping. Okay, Monica replies, still processing the weight of his earlier revelations. She watches him head towards another part of the apartment. Once Izuku is out of sight, her curiosity gets the better of her. She glances around the living room, her gaze eventually landing on the pistol lying on the coffee table. Hesitantly, she reaches out and picks it up. The cool metal feels strangely heavy in her hand. She examines it closely, her eyes tracing the intricate carvings on the side. Her brow furrows as she recognizes the Japanese characters. The judge, Shinpan, she reads aloud softly, the word resonating with a sense of finality. The craftsmanship is meticulous, making the name seem less like a casual moniker and more like an intrinsic part of the weapon itself. Her mind races, connecting the name with Izuku's mission. The judge, she murmurs to herself, turning the pistol over in her hands. He was tasked with saving us, by the goddess, so I guess. A chilling realization dawns on her. He has this, to judge those who hurt us. The weight of the name, coupled with Izuku's earlier words about Natsuki's father, suddenly takes on a much darker and more significant meaning. The unseen hero might be prepared to deliver a final verdict on those who inflict pain upon his friends. Wait, Monica says aloud, her brow furrowing in thought as she recalls Izuku's earlier words. He said he was going to shoot Natsuki's father in the leg, and let the authorities deal with him. The stark contrast between the ominous name of the gun and Izuku's stated intention creates a confusing dissonance in her mind. Was the judge merely a symbolic name, or did it hint at a darker potential within him? She carefully sets the pistol back down on the coffee table, a newfound respect and a touch of apprehension mingling within her. Leaning back against the soft cushions of the couch, her thoughts drift back to Izuku, his quiet strength, his strange past, his determination to help them. A sudden warmth spreads through her chest, and her heart gives a little flutter. A surprising realization dawns on her. So, she thinks to herself, a faint blush creeping onto her cheeks, I already like him, romantically. That's convenient. The thought is unexpected, almost clinical in its observation, yet the warmth in her chest feels undeniably real. The shared secret, his willingness to help, and the intriguing mystery surrounding him have clearly had an effect. A few minutes later, Izuku's voice calls out from upstairs. Monica, you can come up now. Yeah, Monica replies, her curiosity piqued. Follow me, Izuku says, his tone gentle. Monica follows him up the stairs to a quiet hallway. He leads her to a closed door with a nameplate that is visibly burnt and blackened, the original inscription unreadable. What's this? Monica asks softly, a sense of solemnity washing over her. Izuku pauses, his gaze lingering on the damaged nameplate. A hint of sadness flickers across his face. My mother's room, he explains quietly. I burned the nameplate so I didn't have to bear to look at her door with sadness every day. It's been like this since she passed. He turns to Monica, a small, kind smile on his lips. Feel free to change into some of her nightgowns. They should be in the closet. Keep them if you want. But please, get some rest, Monica. It's been a long and strange night. With that, he turns and walks back towards his own room, leaving her standing at the doorway of his mother's untouched space. As Monica steps into the room, she's immediately struck by its peaceful and orderly atmosphere. Unlike the tech-laden living room downstairs, this space feels untouched by modern gadgetry. A comfortable bed is neatly made, a small bookshelf holds a collection of classic literature, and personal touches like framed photographs and dried flowers add a sense of warmth and history. There's no sign of wires, screens, or humming devices. A stark contrast to the hidden world Izuku revealed earlier. The thought crosses her mind that perhaps building and tinkering with technology is Izuku's way of escaping the quiet solitude and memories that might linger in this room, a way to distract himself from his own existence and the sometimes harsh realities he's faced. She walks over to the closet, its wooden doors slightly ajar. Inside, she finds a selection of nightgowns, some made of delicate lace and silk, others simpler cotton. A few are, as she notes with a slight blush, rather revealing. She carefully chooses one that seems the most modest, a soft, flowing gown made of a dark, comfortable material. Stepping into the shadows behind the partially closed closet doors, she quickly and discreetly changes, her silhouette briefly visible to the unseen camera, though the dim light obscures any significant details. Once dressed, she emerges from the closet, a sense of quiet comfort settling over her in the soft fabric of Izuku's mother's nightgown. The room feels safe and peaceful, a welcome respite after the strange and unsettling events of the night. Monica, a wry smile playing on her lips, glances directly at the small camera in the corner of the room, a device she now knows is there, observing. With a playful shake of her index finger, she addresses the unseen audience with a knowing look. "Ah, she says softly, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "Stop being perverts. You have other books to do that with." With that direct, fourth-wall-breaking address, a characteristic wink, and a final, comfortable sigh, Monica climbs into the bed, pulling the soft covers up to her chin. The room is quiet, the only sound her gentle breathing as she closes her eyes and drifts off to sleep, finding a measure of peace in the unfamiliar surroundings. Izuku sits hunched over a workbench in a corner of his tech-filled living room, his brow furrowed in concentration as he meticulously solders tiny components onto a circuit board. The device in his hands is delicate and intricate, a project he had started years ago, a gift he had intended to give his mother for Mother's Day, a day that now only brought a dull ache to his chest. He remembers it was just 3 days before the holiday when he lost her. As he works, his gaze drifts upwards, drawn by a subtle shift in the ambient light. Near the doorway to the hallway, a faint, translucent silhouette begins to coalesce. It takes the form of his mother, her familiar figure shimmering like heat haze. She seems to be looking towards the area where the small vase of dried roses sits on a side table, the roses he and a young Sayori had picked together when he was just 4 years old, a memory both sweet and tinged with sadness. She tilts her head slightly, as if taking in their faint, lingering scent. "Mom," Izuku whispers, his voice catching in his throat. He knows it's just a trick of his mind, a fleeting image conjured by grief and exhaustion. She can't possibly hear him. But then, her head turns. Her translucent eyes, filled with a familiar warmth, meet his. A gentle, loving smile spreads across her face, and she speaks, her voice as soft and melodious as he remembers, an angelic echo from the past. "Hello, my sweet baby boy," she says, her voice carrying a hint of a celestial quality. "How are you? Enjoying your life?" Izuku is frozen, the soldering iron slipping from his numb fingers and clattering onto the workbench. Stunned silence is all he can offer, his mind struggling to comprehend what he's seeing and hearing. His mother, speaking to him. It's impossible. The gentle smile on the silhouette's face twists, contorting into a mask of bitter resentment. The angelic quality of her voice shatters, replaced by a harsh, distorted tone, laced with venomous accusation. "You're the reason why I'm dead," the figure snarls, the loving warmth completely gone. "Had I not had you, I wouldn't have had stomach cancer, since you destroyed my womb. Be lucky you're alive, it should have been you." The spectral voice rises to a furious yell, the distorted sound echoing in the silent room, tearing through Izuku's fragile composure. The image of his beloved mother has been twisted into a horrifying specter of guilt and blame. Izuku blinks hard, shaking his head violently as if trying to dislodge a persistent nightmare. When he opens his eyes again, the faint silhouette of his mother is gone, the space near the doorway empty. He stands up, a cold dread gripping his heart. The vision, the voice, it felt too real, too targeted. Was this the entity Monica spoke of, trying to break him? He walks into the kitchen, the aroma of stale coffee doing little to soothe his frayed nerves. He picks up his lukewarm mug and, with a sigh, pours the dark liquid down the drain. Sleep feels like a distant luxury now. He needs to ensure Monica is all right. He quietly makes his way upstairs and gently pushes open the door to his mother's room. Moonlight streams through the window, illuminating Monica's sleeping form in the bed. Her expression is peaceful, a soft smile playing on her lips. She seems happy, Izuku murmurs, a small sense of relief washing over him. He walks over to the side table next to the bed, the one where the imagined silhouette of his mother had lingered. He carefully places a delicate metal rose, a flower he had painstakingly crafted and painted to look as real as possible, another unfinished project, a silent tribute to his mother that he never had the chance to give. He lingers for a moment, a bittersweet ache in his chest, before quietly leaving the room, closing the door softly behind him. Unbeknownst to Izuku, as he retreats to his own room, a subtle stirring occurs beneath the covers in his mother's bed. In the depths of her sleep, Monica's peaceful expression shifts, a faint flush rising on her cheeks. A dreamy smile widens, and she subtly rubs her thighs together, lost in a vivid fantasy of making out with the green-haired hero who had unexpectedly entered her life. The unsettling events of the night are momentarily forgotten in the realm of her subconscious desires. The next morning dawns with a deceptive sense of normalcy. Izuku walks alongside Sayori and Monica towards school, the usual sounds of students chattering filling the air. However, beneath the surface, the events of the previous night, the unsettling visions, the shared secrets, and the burgeoning romantic feelings, linger in the minds of at least two of them. "So you two were planning something for the school festival last night?" Sayori asks, her tone light and curious, oblivious to the deeper conversation that had transpired. "Yup," Monica replies, her voice maintaining its usual cheerful cadence, though Izuku detects a subtle undercurrent of something else, perhaps a lingering nervousness or excitement. "We got a little carried away with the planning and totally lost track of time." She offers Sayori a seemingly innocent smile. Izuku nods in agreement, adding his own casual confirmation. "Yeah, it was getting pretty late. Monica ended up staying over." He tries to keep his tone neutral, hoping Sayori doesn't read too much into his words. Sayori's eyes widen slightly, a playful smirk forming on her lips. "Oh, really? A late-night planning session, huh? Sounds intense." She winks at Monica, her teasing tone suggesting she might suspect more than just festival preparations. Monica blushes slightly, but quickly recovers. "It was just going over some complicated logistics. You know how it is with these things." Izuku observes the exchange, a small smile playing on his lips. Sayori's teasing is innocent enough, but for him and Monica, there's a layer of unspoken understanding beneath the surface. The festival planning had indeed been intense, but not in the way Sayori imagined. As they continue their walk, the conversation shifts to lighter topics, the upcoming festival dominating their chatter. But for Izuku and Monica, the memory of the previous night and the looming threat they discussed remain a silent undercurrent, shaping their interactions and their perceptions of the seemingly ordinary day ahead. Upon arriving at school, Izuku and Monica part ways with Sayori and head to their shared first-period class. The day unfolds with a familiar rhythm of lectures, assignments, and the general hum of academic life. For Izuku, however, the lingering effects of the previous night's unsettling visions and the weight of his secret mission make it difficult to fully focus. He finds himself constantly observing his surroundings, a subtle tension underlying his usual calm demeanor. Monica, too, seems slightly more reserved, her thoughts occasionally drifting back to the strange events at Izuku's house and the unexpected connection she felt. As the afternoon rolls around, the scene shifts to the familiar setting of the literature clubroom. The air is filled with the quiet rustling of paper as Yuri immerses herself in a book, and Natsuki flips through the pages of a manga with a slight frown. Sayori bounces in her seat, humming a cheerful tune. In the corner, slightly separated from the others, Izuku sits in a metal folding chair, leaning precariously back against its frame. A thick paperback book rests on his face, effectively jadang the world and hinting at a state of sleep. Beside each of the girls is a folded piece of paper, Izuku's poems, written for them the other night, with a small, individually wrapped cookie tied to each one with a piece of string. He had slipped them onto their desks before succumbing to exhaustion, the lack of sleep from the previous night finally catching up to him. The gentle rhythm of his breathing suggests he has indeed drifted off, trusting the relative safety of the clubroom and the presence of his friends. Okay, someone wake him up. I can hear him snoring from here. Natsuki's sharp voice cuts through the quiet of the clubroom, effectively shattering Izuku's brief respite. The suddenness and volume of her outburst startle him awake, causing him to jolt forward in the precarious metal folding chair. He loses his balance and tumbles forward, landing face first onto the wooden floor with a muffled, "Ow." The book that had been covering his face slides away, revealing his slightly dazed and definitely annoyed expression. "Izuku, are you okay?" Sayori rushes to his side, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced with concern as she kneels beside him. That looked like it hurt. Izuku pushes himself up, rubbing his forehead with a groan. "I'm fine," he mumbles, still a bit disoriented. He glares in Natsuki's direction, though his tone is more weary than genuinely angry. "However," he adds, his voice laced with a touch of annoyance, "please don't yell." He then directs a pointed look at Natsuki. "And sorry for disturbing your delicate sensibilities, Princess Pink Hair. Some of us didn't get a full night's sleep dealing with extracurricular activities." Before Izuku can fully settle back into his chair, Natsuki, her face a mask of fury, grabs the nearest book, likely one of her precious manga, and hurls it at his head with surprising force. Years of honed reflexes and ingrained self-preservation kick in instantly. His eyes widen, tracking the projectile. In a fluid, almost instinctual movement, he leaps back to his feet, pivoting his body into a textbook roundhouse kick. His foot connects with the book with a resounding thwack, sending it hurtling through one of the classroom windows, shattering the glass in a shower of sharp fragments that rain down onto the outside walkway. The sudden violence of the act silences the room. Sayori gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. Yuri flinches, her violet eyes wide with shock. Even Monica, who usually maintains a composed facade, stares in stunned disbelief at the gaping hole in the window and the remnants of glass on the floor. Izuku lands back in his metal folding chair with a heavy thud, the flimsy frame creaking under the sudden impact. He leans forward, his chest heaving, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The adrenaline coursing through his veins leaves him trembling slightly. The casual atmosphere of the literature club has been shattered once again, replaced by a palpable tension and a stunned silence. His outburst, a raw display of unexpected power, has left everyone reeling. How? Natsuki stammers, her voice barely a whisper, her initial fury replaced by a visible fear as she stares at the gaping hole in the window and then at Izuku. Reflexes, Izuku replies simply, his breathing slowly returning to normal. He avoids eye contact, a wave of embarrassment washing over him at his sudden outburst. "Sorry about that, I didn't mean to." He stands up, his movements now deliberate and controlled. He grabs a broom and dustpan from a corner of the room and wordlessly begins to sweep up the shattered glass, the scraping sound echoing in the stunned silence. A moment later, he leaves the clubroom, returning a few minutes after with a new window pane and a tube of sealant. With a focused determination, he sets to work, carefully fitting the new glass into the frame. The process is slow and a little clumsy, and he winces a few times, likely from small cuts. After what feels like an eternity to the others, and a few muttered curses under his breath, the new window pane is finally in place, sealing the opening. He drops the tools with a sigh and collapses back into the unforgiving metal folding chair, his chest still heaving slightly. The adrenaline has faded, leaving behind a sense of exhaustion and a lingering awkwardness. He looks at the others, his expression apologetic. "Again, I'm sorry, I just reacted." "Yeah," Sayori says slowly, her eyes wide as she watches Izuku's movements. She takes a hesitant step back, then another, until she's standing close beside Monica, a clear sense of unease radiating from her. She subtly bumps Monica's arm, seeking a sense of reassurance and proximity. The casual atmosphere of their club has been thoroughly shattered, replaced by a tangible tension and a hint of fear in the air. "Okay," Monica says, her voice a little strained as she tries to regain control of the situation. The unexpected display of Izuku's power has clearly shaken her, but as club president, she feels the need to restore some semblance of order. Meeting closed for today. Let's all focus on prepping for the festival. Izuku, you can continue doing your own thing with your tech. Everyone else, you know your roles. With a brisk nod, Monica turns and leaves the clubroom, the tension in the air following her out. However, as she walks down the hallway, a wave of embarrassment and a strange sense of guilt washes over her. Her thoughts drift back to the previous night in Izuku's mother's room. I woke up with my inner thighs being drenched in my own releases, she thinks, her cheeks flushing crimson. The vivid dream about Izuku replays in her mind, the intensity of her subconscious desires leaving her feeling mortified. I feel so terrible, at least it didn't get on the bed. A wave of shame washes over her at her body's involuntary reaction to the unexpected presence of Izuku in her life. Back in the clubroom, Izuku sighs, the earlier adrenaline having completely drained him. He slings his bag over his shoulder and heads for the door. Unspoken concern etched on her face, Sayori trails a cautious foot behind him, her usual bubbly energy subdued by the earlier outburst. As the door closes behind them, Yuri speaks softly, her gaze lingering on the empty space Izuku occupied. Izuku seems tired, and not the classes are upon tired. More like generally exhausted. Like he's carrying a heavy weight. Natsuki huffs, crossing her arms stubbornly. Still doesn't change the fact he called me Princess Pink Hair. That pissed me off. He's lucky he fixed the window. Despite her annoyance, there's a flicker of something else in her eyes, perhaps a hint of fear or a grudging acknowledgement of his unexpected strength. Well, Yuri says quietly, her gaze following the empty doorway where Izuku and Sayori disappeared, had you not thrown that book, you likely wouldn't have gotten that reaction out of him. Her tone is gentle, almost a murmur, but her words carry a subtle weight of observation. Natsuki scoffs, her frustration still simmering. I'm out, she declares abruptly, grabbing her bag and stomping out of the clubroom, leaving Yuri alone with her thoughts and the lingering tension in the air. Yuri watches Natsuki's departure, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. What was that? She ponders aloud, her voice barely a whisper in the now empty room. She picks up the small cookie tied to Izuku's poem, her delicate fingers tracing the string. She unwraps it slowly and takes a small, tentative bite, her violet eyes distant as she considers the strange and unsettling events of the afternoon. The sweetness of the cookie does little to dispel the lingering questions in her mind about Izuku's sudden outburst and the undercurrent of exhaustion she had sensed in him. The scene shifts to Monica's room, a space reflecting the typical interests of a teenage girl. Posters of her favorite bands and anime characters adorn the walls, and stacks of manga and novels sit precariously on shelves. The door is firmly locked. Monica lies on her bed, her back to the camera, the soft light from her bedside lamp casting long shadows across the room. A tense silence fills the air before she slowly moves her right arm upwards, the motion becoming increasingly rapid and rhythmic beneath the covers. Her breathing quickens, and a soft, almost whimpering sound escapes her lips. The movements intensify until a muffled squeal is heard, her hand flying to cover her mouth as if to stifle the sound. A moment later, her body goes still, her breathing heavy and ragged as she seemingly drifts into a restless sleep, the lingering effects of her earlier thoughts and desires perhaps still playing out in her subconscious. The slam of the literature club door still echoes in Natsuki's ears. Honestly, the nerve of that green-haired oaf, calling her Princess Pink Hair, like it was some kind of insult. And then that ridiculous kick, shattering the window like it was made of paper. It was unsettling, powerful, something she didn't expect from the usually quiet and seemingly exhausted Izuku. She stomps down the school hallway, her small frame radiating a surprising amount of indignation. Her arms are crossed tightly over her chest, her pink pigtails bouncing with each angry step. She mutters under her breath, a string of colorful but not particularly inventive insults directed at Izuku. TCH. Big show off, she huffs. Thinks he's so cool with his reflexes. It's not my fault he fell asleep during club. And he was snoring. It was distracting. Despite her outward anger, a tiny seed of unease has been planted in her mind. The sheer force of Izuku's kick, the speed of his reaction, it was beyond anything normal. Even for the overly dramatic fight scenes in her manga, it made her wonder if there was more to him than met the eye. But she quickly squashes the thought. He was still annoying, still probably looked down on her manga, and still had that weird, tired look in his eyes all the time. She reaches her classroom, the familiar setting doing little to calm her frayed nerves. She plunks down in her seat, pulling out her notebook with more force than necessary. Maybe if she focused on drawing her latest manga panel, she could forget about the bizarre events in the clubroom. Forget about Izuku's strange reflexes. Forget about the way Sayori had looked genuinely scared. But the image of the shattered window keeps flashing in her mind. The raw, almost violent energy of Izuku's movement. It was scary, and a part of her, a tiny, reluctant part, wondered what else he was capable of. "Ah, Mrs. Natsuki, you here for the afternoon lecture? Good, now listen up folks," the teacher said as she rambled on and on about World War II and why Japan has an alliance with America. Natsuki scowls, the sound of the teacher's voice droning on about history doing little to soothe her still agitated state. "Ugh," she mutters under her breath, slamming her notebook open with more force than necessary. World War II, Japan's alliance with America, what did any of that have to do with a green-haired weirdo kicking a book through a window? She tries to focus on the blank page in front of her, the familiar comfort of sketching her manga usually a welcome distraction. But today, the lines seem blurry, her concentration fractured by the lingering images of the clubroom. The way Izuku moved, the sound of the shattering glass, Sayori's wide, frightened eyes. She taps her pencil against the paper impatiently. Maybe she should just try to draw something, anything to get it out of her head. Perhaps a super cool manga hero with incredible reflexes, kicking down a giant robot. No, that was too close. She sighs, leaning back in her chair and staring out the window, the repaired window in the literature club now a stark reminder of the afternoon's events. A wave of conflicting emotions washes over her. Anger at being called Princess Pink Hair, fear at Izuku's unexpected power, and a grudging curiosity about the exhaustion she had seen in his eyes. Maybe Yuri had a point. Maybe she had provoked him. But still, that reaction was way over the top. The teacher's voice fades into a dull background hum as Natsuki's thoughts continue to swirl. She glances around the classroom, noticing the other students diligently taking notes. Should she say something to anyone? Talk to Yuri later? Confront Izuku again? A stubborn frown settles back on her face. No, she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. She would just ignore it. Pretend it never happened. But deep down, a tiny voice whispers that she won't be able to forget it that easily. Natsuki sighs, the hour-long lecture feeling like an eternity. Finally, the bell rings, signaling the end of the school day. She quickly gathers her things, eager to escape the stifling classroom and the lingering thoughts of the afternoon's bizarre events. The fresh air outside is a welcome change, but her mood remains sour. As she walks towards her house, a familiar sense of dread begins to creep in. Her father's moods were unpredictable, and the slightest thing could set him off. She tries to keep her head down, hoping to avoid any unnecessary interaction. However, as she steps through the front door, a sudden, sharp pain explodes across her face. The stinging sensation and the metallic tang of blood in her mouth make her gasp. Her vision blurs for a moment as she stumbles backward, her hand flying to her cheek. Her father stands before her, his face contorted in a familiar rage, a thick leather belt held loosely in his hand. His eyes are dark and accusing, though his words are slurred and incoherent. The familiar scent of alcohol hangs heavy in the air. Where were you?" he demands, his voice rough. "You think you can just come and go as you please?" Natsuki shrinks back, fear gripping her heart. This was a familiar pattern, a cycle of anger and pain that she felt powerless to escape. The events of the school day, Izuku's strange outburst, all fade into the background, overshadowed by the immediate threat before her. Her small frame trembles, and she braces herself for whatever might come next, the brief escape of the school day brutally shattered by the harsh reality of her home life. "And no," Natsuki stammers, her voice trembling, the earlier defiance from school completely evaporated. She clutches her stinging cheek, her eyes wide with fear as she looks up at her father's angry face. I was forced to go to an afternoon lecture. I failed a test. I'm sorry for not being home sooner, father. I didn't mean to." Her words tumble out in a rush, a desperate attempt to appease his anger. The lie about the forced lecture comes easily, a well-worn shield against his unpredictable wrath. The truth, the lingering in the literature club, the shocking display of Izuku's power, is something she knows better than to reveal. It would only invite more questions, more suspicion, more anger. She shrinks back, bracing herself, her small frame tense and waiting. The familiar scent of alcohol and the cold, hard look in her father's eyes tell her that her explanation might not be enough. The fear of what might come next hangs heavy in the air, suffocating her with its familiar weight. The brief flicker of curiosity and unease she felt towards Izuku has been completely extinguished, replaced by the immediate and terrifying reality of her life at home. "You're lucky you're my daughter, or I'd fuck your brains out, you little bitch, now go make dinner before I kill your stupid ass," her father said. Her father's words hit Natsuki like another blow, even more painful than the belt. She flinches, her eyes welling up with tears, though she desperately tries to blink them back. The raw, hateful language and the implied threat send a fresh wave of fear crashing over her. "Why yes, father," she whispers, her voice barely audible. Her earlier anger and frustration are completely gone, replaced by a primal instinct to obey and survive. She avoids his gaze, her head bowed in submission. Without another word, she turns and hurries towards the kitchen, her cheek throbbing with pain, her heart pounding in her chest. The fear of further violence propels her forward. The image of Izuku's powerful kick, the strange exhaustion in his eyes, all of it is forgotten in the face of the immediate danger she faces within her own home. Her only focus now is to follow her father's command, to make dinner, and to try to make herself as invisible as possible until his rage subsides. The small comfort she sometimes found in her manga and the fleeting curiosity about Izuku seem like distant memories in the oppressive atmosphere of her house. Meanwhile, across town, the atmosphere in Izuku's living room is starkly different. He's sprawled in his worn leather recliner, engrossed in a trashy romance novel with a rather specific premise. His eyebrows are slightly raised, a smirk playing on his lips as he reads a particularly steamy passage. Suddenly, a sharp, prickling sensation erupts at the back of his skull. Danger sense, his quirk-derived ability to detect imminent threats, flares to life, cutting through his tawdry reading material like a lightning strike. The pleasant distraction vanishes, replaced by a cold, hard knot of concern in his gut. The feeling is distinct, urgent, and tied to someone he knows. His eyes snap open, the earlier amusement gone, replaced by a focused intensity. He recognizes the signature of the danger, a familiar spike of fear and pain, tinged with a helpless rage. Natsuki. He throws the book aside, the lurid cover landing face down on the floor. "Well," he says, his voice low and devoid of humor, a grim determination hardening his features. "It appears the time has come." A dark chuckle escapes his lips, laced with a bitter irony. "Heh, heh, come." The double entendre hangs in the air, a stark contrast to the seriousness of the situation. He stands up, the earlier languor gone, his body coiled and ready for action. The unseen hero is about to step out of the shadows. Adrenaline surging through his veins, Izuku moves with blinding speed. In mere seconds, he's donned his vigilante suit, the familiar fabric a comfort and a symbol of his purpose. The judge is secured at his side, a cold promise of the justice he intends to deliver. Without hesitation, he bursts out of his house and leaps across the rooftops, his movements fluid and powerful as he navigates the urban landscape towards Natsuki's address. Arriving at her house, he moves stealthily to a window and peers inside. The scene that unfolds before his eyes ignites a white-hot fury within him, a rage unlike anything he has felt before. Natsuki is pinned beneath her father, his face a mask of drunken cruelty as he chokes her with his belt. His other hand is violating her, touching her in places that no adult should ever touch a child. The sight is sickening, a grotesque violation of innocence that makes Izuku's blood run cold. The restraint he has been trying to maintain shatters. Any thought of subtlety or a measured approach vanishes in the face of this horrific abuse. With a primal roar of fury, he charges towards the front door and unleashes a devastating kick. The door splinters off its hinges, flying inward with tremendous force and slamming directly into Natsuki's father, knocking him off balance and away from his terrified daughter. Izuku steps into the house, his eyes burning with righteous anger as he fixes his gaze on the groaning figure on the floor. His voice is low and dangerous, each word laced with ice. "You disgusting prick," he snarls, his hand instinctively resting on the handle of the judge. "I hope you know I have already called the authorities to deal with you." The lie is delivered with a chilling conviction, a final judgment declared upon the abuser. "And who the fuck are you?" Natsuki's father spits, his voice thick with rage and pain as he clutches his injured leg, glaring up at the imposing figure standing in his doorway. Izuku's demeanor shifts, his voice drops, resonating with a deep, chilling quality that seems to fill the room, sending a shiver down the spine. "I am," he says, the single word drawn out, imbued with an almost demonic power, Deku. Before the man can react, Izuku's hand flashes to his side, and the sharp crack of the judge echoes through the house. A bullet finds its mark in the man's other leg, eliciting a fresh, agonizing scream. "Arg, you dick," he yells, clutching his now bleeding limb, his face contorted in fury and agony. In the immediate aftermath, Izuku turns his attention to Natsuki, who is huddled on the floor, trembling and terrified. His anger softens into a fierce protectiveness. He quickly grabs a nearby tablecloth and gently wraps it around her naked body, shielding her from view. He then pulls out a small, specialized phone and presses a single emergency button. Less than 30 minutes later, the wail of sirens pierces the night air as police cars arrive at the scene. They find Izuku kneeling beside Natsuki, carefully examining a nasty bruise forming on her cheek. "Who are you?" a uniformed police officer asks, his eyes scanning the scene, the broken door, the injured man groaning on the floor, the young girl wrapped in a tablecloth. "Not important," Izuku replies, his voice firm but calm. "But just know that an abusive rapist is currently holding wounds in both of his legs. And just so you know," he adds, his gaze unwavering, "I shot him out of self-defense for this girl." He gestures gently towards Natsuki. With that, the police officers move past him, their attention focused on the injured man, and the process of arrest begins. Once Natsuki's father is secured in the back of a police car, the officer who spoke to Izuku turns to him, a look of gratitude on his face. "Thank you for your intervention, sir. You may have saved this young girl from further harm." He then turns his attention to Natsuki, his expression softening with concern. "Do you have any other family or a safe place to go, miss?" Natsuki, still wrapped in the tablecloth and visibly shaken, shakes her head, her voice barely a whisper. "No." Izuku steps forward, his gaze gentle as he looks at Natsuki. "Hey," he says softly, his voice calm and reassuring. "You can live with me. I don't live far from here. I have a spare room. It's safe." He offers her a small, kind smile. "I'll even carry your stuff. Once you're dressed, of course." He gestures towards the house, indicating he understands the sensitivity of her current situation. With the police having taken Natsuki's father into custody and the immediate danger seemingly past, the officers thank Izuku once more for his intervention and then depart. Izuku waits patiently while Natsuki, with a newfound sense of safety, gathers some of her belongings. He respectfully holds her small bag of clothes, careful not to intrude on her privacy. The 30-minute walk to Izuku's house is quiet, the silence punctuated only by their footsteps. When they finally arrive, Izuku steps inside and gently sets her bag down in the living room. He then reaches up and removes his vigilante mask, the soft click of the fasteners echoing in the stillness. With a flourish, he flicks on the main lights, illuminating the familiar, tech-infused space. "Welcome, Natsuki," Izuku says, turning to face her with a soft smile and a hint of nervousness. Natsuki stares at him, her eyes wide with confusion. How do you know my name?" she asks, her voice still a little shaky. "It's me, Natsuki," Izuku replies, his smile widening into a slightly goofy grin. "Ta-da," he punctuates his reveal with a playful flourish of jazz hands, hoping to lighten the heavy atmosphere. "Izuku," Natsuki exclaims, her voice a mixture of shock and disbelief as she takes in his familiar face in the unfamiliar setting of his vigilante persona. "Yup, it's me," Izuku confirms, his expression earnest. "Look, about what you saw, could you maybe keep it to yourself? For now, at least. It's kind of a secret hobby." He shifts his weight slightly, feeling a bit awkward. But more importantly, you're safe here, Natsuki. My place is pretty secure. Think of it as a fortress against bad guys. As Natsuki's eyes dart around the living room, still processing the shock of Izuku's dual identity and the strange array of technology, her gaze lands on a book lying face down on the floor near the recliner. She picks it up, her brow furrowing as she reads the lurid title aloud. Namori has a daddy kink, she says, her voice laced with a mixture of disgust and amusement as she looks at Izuku. Seriously, Izuku, Sayori wasn't lying when she said you read trashy romance novels. A small, reluctant smirk tugs at the corner of her lips despite the trauma she has just endured. The absurdity of the situation, coupled with the familiar teasing dynamic of the literature club, creates a bizarrely normal moment amidst the chaos. Hey, it has a very intricate plot. Izuku protests, a faint blush creeping onto his cheeks. He quickly tries to snatch the book back. It explores complex themes of, interpersonal relationships. Natsuki holds the book just out of his reach, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Oh, I bet it does, she says, her grin widening. Don't worry, Izuku, I won't tell Sayori, but Yuri. Oh, she's going to love this. Especially after all those highbrow gothic novels she reads. She makes a mock shudder. This will be a real eye-opener for her. Do you even know what it's actually about? Izuku asks, his voice laced with a desperate hope that she hasn't fully grasped the specifics. Natsuki's grin widens, and she raises an eyebrow knowingly. Yes, I do, Izuku. It's about a threesome between two teenagers and a 20-year-old woman, who has a rather intense daddy kink. The bluntness of her summary, delivered with such casual knowingness, completely deflates Izuku's last shred of defense. He stares at her, his mouth agape, before collapsing backward onto his couch with a dramatic, oof. His face is a mask of utter shock and embarrassment. Okay, you win, he mumbles from the depths of the cushions, his face buried in his hands. Just, please don't tell Yuri, or Sayori, or Monica, actually, maybe just don't tell anyone. The image of Yuri's reaction to that particular plot point fills him with a sense of impending doom. Fine, Natsuki says, a mischievous glint sparkling in her eyes. Only if you act out a scene from the book with me. Izuku's eyes widen with a visible flicker of fear. And, which scene would that be? He asks hesitantly, a sense of impending awkwardness washing over him. Natsuki's grin returns, wider and more playful this time. Oh, you know exactly which one. Oh no. Izuku groans softly, burying his face in his hands again for a brief moment before resigning himself to his fate. A few minutes later, the scene unfolds in Izuku's living room. He's sitting stiffly in his recliner, his face a mixture of apprehension and amusement. Natsuki is perched on his lap, a theatrical air about her as she leans in close, adopting a dramatically seductive tone. Oh, Sake, Natsuki purrs, her voice a playful imitation of the book's character, how I crave what you hide beneath your shirt. She leans in closer, her gaze intense as she looks directly into Izuku's eyes, channeling her inner, Namori. Won't you ravage me, breed me? The tension in the room thickens, a bizarre blend of awkwardness and theatrical fun. Just as she leans in even further, seemingly about to escalate the scene, Natsuki suddenly sits up straight, her mischievous grin returning full force. Boop, she exclaims, reaching out and playfully poking Izuku right on the nose. The sudden shift from intense seduction to childish playfulness is jarring, breaking the tension and leaving Izuku blinking in surprise. You know, Izuku says, a playful smirk returning to his face as he recovers from the unexpected, boop, I thought you had at least enough courage to actually finish the scene, Natsuki. Guess you're a chicken, he chuckles lightly, enjoying her flustered reaction. But what happens next wipes the amusement from his face, replacing it with stunned surprise. Natsuki, her cheeks flushed a delicate pink, seems determined to prove him wrong. Her playful mischief shifts into something more daring. She leans forward again, not with theatrical exaggeration this time, but with a genuine intent. Her eyes lock with his, and then she closes the remaining distance, pressing her lips to his in a soft, fleeting kiss. The moment the kiss ends, she pulls back slightly, her gaze still locked on his. Izuku stares back, his surprise evident. The playful atmosphere has suddenly taken a decidedly different turn. A charged silence hangs between them, a mixture of shock, curiosity, and a dawning awareness. Then, slowly, hesitantly, Izuku reaches out, his hands gently framing her face. Natsuki leans into his touch, her own hands finding their way to his shoulders. The initial tentative kiss deepens, becoming more passionate, more exploratory. He lifts her effortlessly into his arms, and she wraps her legs around his waist as the kiss intensifies. Lost in the moment, they make their way towards Izuku's room, the world outside fading away. The door closes behind them. The screen fades to black, holding on the darkness until the soft glow of morning light begins to filter through a window. The scene then shifts to Izuku's bedroom, where he and Natsuki lie entangled in the sheets, their clothes discarded on the floor. The peaceful rise and fall of their chests indicates they are asleep, the events of the previous night having led to an intimacy neither of them might have fully anticipated. A soft groan of contentment escapes Natsuki's lips as she and Izuku slowly sit up in the tangled sheets, a shared sense of lingering pleasure in their eyes. "Well," Natsuki says, a playful but firm tone in her voice, "if I end up pregnant, Midoriya, you are taking full responsibility." "Understand." "Got it," Izuku replies readily, a small smile on his face. "But have no worries, Natsuki. We used protection." He gestures towards the overflowing trash can in the corner of the room, where a clearly used and expanded condom is visible. "Oh," Natsuki says, her eyes following his gesture. A slight blush colors her cheeks. Well, in that case," she looks back at him, a mischievous glint returning to her eyes, "do we have time for another round before school?" Izuku glances at the digital clock on his bedside table, his eyes widening slightly. It's only 6 am. We definitely have time." He grins. "Yeah, one more round sounds good. Wanna take it to the shower?" "Yeah," Natsuki agrees, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. With a shared glance and a renewed spark of intimacy, they head to the bathroom. The sounds of running water and soft laughter soon fill the air. After their second encounter, they quickly get dressed for school, a comfortable camaraderie now woven into their interactions. Arriving at their usual meeting spot, they find Sayori waiting, her usual bright smile slightly subdued with concern. Izuku, Natsuki, why are you both here?" Sayori asks, her gaze shifting between them with curiosity. Natsuki steps forward, offering a somewhat abridged version of the previous night's events. "Well," she begins, her voice surprisingly steady, "my father was arrested last night. It's a long story. Anyway, I called Monica and asked if I could stay with her, but she said no and gave me Izuku's address. Thank Kami he was up working on something, or I would have been outside all night." She avoids making direct eye contact with Sayori, a hint of awkwardness in her demeanor. "Okay," Sayori says, her usual cheerfulness returning, seemingly accepting Natsuki's explanation without further questions. With the trio now reunited, they head towards school. However, upon arriving, they discover an unexpected change in the day's schedule. A notice on the main doors announces that all regular classes have been cancelled to allow students and faculty to focus entirely on preparations for the upcoming school festival. "Sweet. No classes," Sayori exclaims, her enthusiasm immediately reignited. "Looks like it's festival prep day," Monica observes, having just arrived with Yuri and joining their small group. "Okay, give me a moment. I have to go grab my tech," Izuku says, a sudden urgency in his voice. He turns and sprints back in the direction of his house, clearly having remembered some crucial equipment he needs for the festival preparations. A minute later, Izuku returns to the group, carrying a large backpack that seems much heavier than it looks. The literature club makes their way to their designated room for festival preparations. Once inside, Izuku immediately gets to work. He unfolds a portable table and sets it up in a corner of the room. From his backpack and a previously unnoticed storage closet, he retrieves an assortment of electronic components, wires, tools, and several devices that appear to be in various stages of completion. Then, to everyone's surprise, he pulls out a full welding mask from his backpack, followed by a compact but powerful-looking welding machine from the closet. Gasps of astonishment ripple through the room. Before anyone can question his actions, Izuku swiftly sets up a large, opaque screen around his corner workspace, effectively blocking their direct line of sight. The faint hum of the welding machine soon begins, accompanied by the muffled sounds of metal being worked on, ensuring no one is inadvertently exposed to the bright and potentially harmful light of the welder. The other club members exchange bewildered glances, clearly intrigued and slightly concerned by Izuku's unexpected display of technical prowess. "Well, listen to his enthusiasm," Monika says, a wry smile on her face as she gestures towards the muffled sounds emanating from behind Izuku's screen. "All right girls, let's get to work. Natsuki, there's a stove right over there, time to work your baking magic. Sayori, banners are your domain. Yuri, you're in charge of those beautiful posters. Izuku," she calls out towards his corner, "you got those special darts I requested?" "Yeah, got 55 out of 60. Izuku replies, his voice slightly muffled by the welding mask. "Give me about an hour, and they'll be perfect." "Good to hear," Monika says, nodding in satisfaction. "Then I'll get started on the dartboard design." With Monika's directions, the literature club members disperse to their assigned tasks. Natsuki heads towards the stove, presumably to begin preparing some festival treats. Sayori grabs a roll of colorful paper and starts sketching out banner designs with her usual energetic flair. Yuri carefully lays out large sheets of paper, her brow furrowed in concentration as she contemplates the artistic style for the posters. And behind his protective screen, the rhythmic hum and occasional spark of Izuku's welding continue as he works on the mysterious darts. The room fills with a productive buzz as everyone contributes to the preparations for the upcoming school festival. 4 hours later, the literature club room has been transformed into a hive of industrious activity. By the stove, Natsuki proudly surveys her handiwork. 4 refrigerators, their shelves laden with an impressive array of sweets, cakes, and a generous supply of Izuku's uniquely flavored cookies. Tucked amongst the sugary treats are also containers of steaming miso soup and several portions of mouthwatering katsudon, a testament to her culinary skills. In another corner, a substantial pile of meticulously crafted darts rests on Izuku's fold-out table, a testament to his focused work behind the protective screen. 6 colorful dartboards lean against the wall, ready for installation. Banners adorned with cheerful lettering and vibrant illustrations hang from the ceiling, while a stack of beautifully drawn posters showcasing the club and its members leans against a bookshelf, all thanks to the combined artistic talents of Sayori and Yuri. The room buzzes with a sense of accomplishment and anticipation for the upcoming festival. After another hour of diligent work, Monika calls for a well-deserved break. Izuku and Natsuki quietly slip away to an empty classroom, a sense of anticipation hanging in the air between them. Once inside, Natsuki reaches back and clicks the lock on the door, the sound echoing softly in the stillness. She turns and steps closer to Izuku, her gaze direct and a soft smile on her lips. She reaches up and gently cups his face, pulling him down into a tender kiss. Izuku readily returns the embrace, his arms wrapping around her waist. When they finally break apart, a comfortable silence lingers for a moment before Izuku speaks, his voice soft. "So, what are we, Natsuki?" Natsuki's smile widens, a hint of playful mischief in her eyes. "I say, friends with benefits. You down for that, Midoriya?" A genuine smile spreads across Izuku's face. "Totally, Natsuki." He reaches out and gently takes her hand, a new chapter in their unexpected relationship beginning. Natsuki says, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "I just had a thought. What if we invited the others to join our little, friends with benefits thing?" Izuku raises an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in his eyes before a small smile plays on his lips. "I'm fine with it," he says, his voice a low murmur. "But beware, Natsuki, it won't be a smooth ride. Everyone has their own quirks." "Understood," Natsuki replies, a hint of excitement and anticipation in her voice. Without another word, Izuku gently but firmly pins Natsuki against the classroom wall. Her legs instinctively wrap around his waist, pulling him closer as they melt into another passionate kiss, the intensity building quickly between them. The afternoon break has taken an unexpected and decidedly intimate turn. Emerging from the empty classroom, a comfortable warmth and a shared secret now binding them, Izuku and Natsuki subtly adjusted their clothing before returning to the bustling literature club room. Instead of retreating to his corner of technological endeavors, Izuku gravitated towards Natsuki's cooking station. He offered to help, and together they embarked on a new culinary project, crafting a batch of what Natsuki enthusiastically described as fantastic fudge goo cookies. The atmosphere around the stove became light and playful, a stark contrast to the earlier intensity in the classroom. They bantered and teased each other as they measured ingredients, stirred batter, and carefully arranged the cookies on baking sheets. Their easy camaraderie and occasional knowing glances didn't go unnoticed by the other club members, though no one commented directly. The aroma of warm chocolate soon filled the air, adding another layer of pleasant anticipation to the festival preparations. Across the room, while Izuku and Natsuki were engaged in their clandestine rendezvous, Monika, Sayori, and Yuri continued their festival preparations, though a certain curiosity lingered in the air. So, Monika began, a sly smirk playing on her lips, her mind already drifting to the possibilities hinted at by Izuku and Natsuki's absence. A faint blush dusted her cheeks as she imagined the scenarios. "What do you think those two did in that empty classroom?" "I don't wanna know," Sayori replied, her voice unusually flat and devoid of its usual cheerful lilt. She stared blankly at the banner she was supposed to be working on, her expression unreadable. Izuku, who had just returned and overheard Sayori's uncharacteristic tone, immediately perked up, a wave of worry washing over him. He subtly shifted his attention to her, his earlier lightheartedness replaced by a concerned frown. "They probably just went to get more fudge ingredients," Yuri offered, her focus still on meticulously lettering a poster, seemingly oblivious to the subtle shift in Sayori's demeanor and Izuku's reaction. "Oh no," Izuku thought to himself, his gaze fixed on Sayori. Her dull tone and vacant expression sent a jolt of fear through him, triggering a rush of unwanted memories. "Sayori, don't succumb to your darkness, please. I don't want you dead. Because if you die, I have to restart this entire mission from the very beginning." The weight of his hidden knowledge and the potential for tragedy pressed down on him, casting a shadow over the otherwise cheerful atmosphere of the festival preparations. Understanding the immense pressure weighing on Izuku, a pressure stemming from the delicate balance of their reality and the dire consequences of failure he had confided in her, Monika noticed the immediate distress in his eyes as Sayori's usual cheer faltered. Knowing the potential fragility of Sayori's well-being, a truth Izuku had laid bare to her in a private conversation. Flashback. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air between them. "Monika," Izuku had said, his voice strained, the usual light in his emerald eyes dimmed with a desperate plea, "do you understand the sheer amount of pressure that's on me?" Monika had shaken her head, her usual confident demeanor replaced by a genuine concern. "No, I don't think I fully grasp it. If even one of you dies," Izuku had continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, the image of a terrifying reset flashing through his mind, "this entire cycle restarts. And believe me, Monika, it's not pleasant. I failed once. I felt my entire being get rewound, back to infancy. And that," he had emphasized, his gaze intense, "is what led us to this. So please, Monika, you have to understand the stakes." A solemn understanding had dawned in Monika's eyes. "Got it," she had affirmed, the weight of his revelation settling upon her. Flashback end. Now, seeing the shadow that had momentarily fallen over Sayori, Monika acted quickly, her concern mirroring Izuku's. "Hey, cheer up, Sayori," she exclaimed, placing a reassuring hand on her friend's shoulder, her tone deliberately light. Natsuki could have been apologizing for throwing that book at him. You know how awkward she can be when she tries to say sorry. Monika's suggestion seemed to resonate with Sayori. A flicker of her usual brightness returned to her eyes, a fragile glimmer of hope. She glanced towards Izuku, who was currently absorbed in a quiet exchange with Natsuki by the baking station, seemingly unaware of Sayori's momentary lapse. "You make a good point, Monika," Sayori said, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. "Yeah, maybe that's all it was. Thanks, Monika." Monika let out a quiet sigh, a subtle wave of relief washing over her. She exchanged a brief, knowing glance with Izuku, a silent acknowledgement of the averted crisis. For now, the delicate threads of their reality remained intact. The atmosphere in the literature club room was a strange mix of post-festival exhaustion and lingering tension. The remnants of their hard work, The colorful banners, the meticulously arranged suites, the stack of posters, stood as a testament to their shared effort. But beneath the surface, a new dynamic was brewing, a ripple effect from the unexpected turn of events in the empty classroom. Izuku and Natsuki exchanged a nervous glance before Izuku cleared his throat. "So," he began, his voice a little hesitant, "there's something we wanted to talk to you guys about." He gestured towards Natsuki, who fidgeted slightly but met the gazes of her friends with a surprising amount of determination. Natsuki took a deep breath. "Izuku and I, well, we've kind of started something." She paused, searching for the right words. "We're friends, but also more than friends." Monika's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise quickly replaced by a knowing smirk. Yuri's expression remained carefully neutral, her violet eyes studying them with a quiet intensity. But it was Sayori whose reaction was the most telling. Her usual cheerful smile faltered, replaced by a confused and slightly hurt expression. "More than friends," Sayori repeated, her voice barely a whisper. She looked from Izuku to Natsuki, a question in her eyes. "Like dating?" Natsuki shook her head. "Not exactly. We're friends with benefits," she said, the term hanging in the air. She braced herself for their reactions. Monika's smirk widened. "Friends with benefits, huh? Well, that's certainly direct." She leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful look on her face. "Interesting." Yuri's gaze remained fixed on Izuku and Natsuki, her expression unreadable. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea, her silence adding to the tension in the room. Sayori, however, looked even more confused. I don't understand," she stammered. "What does that even mean?" Natsuki's gaze softened as she looked at Sayori. "It means, we're friends. We care about each other. But we also do things like kiss, and more." She blushed slightly, but her voice remained firm. "But it doesn't change anything between us. We're still friends. We're still a club." Izuku nodded in agreement. "We wanted to be honest with you guys. And, well," Natsuki had an idea. He looked at Natsuki, a hint of nervousness in his eyes. Natsuki took another deep breath. "What if you guys joined us?" The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Monika's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of genuine surprise. Yuri's teacup paused halfway to her lips, her eyes widening slightly. And Sayori's confusion deepened, a hint of hurt now mixed with a burgeoning curiosity. Yuri's initial reaction was a study in stillness. Her delicate hand, which had been mid-sip of her tea, froze, the porcelain cup hovering just below her lips. Her violet eyes, usually filled with a soft, introspective light, widened almost imperceptibly as she absorbed Natsuki's unexpected proposition. The silence that emanated from her wasn't one of shock, but rather of intense processing. It was as if her mind, accustomed to navigating complex literary metaphors and intricate character motivations, was now dissecting this very real and rather unconventional scenario. A faint blush, almost the color of a delicate rose petal, crept up her neck and dusted her cheeks. She slowly lowered the teacup, placing it back in its saucer with a soft, almost inaudible clink. Her gaze flickered between Izuku and Natsuki, lingering for a moment on their intertwined hands before returning to their faces. There was no judgment in her expression, only a profound sense of contemplation. Finally, she spoke, her voice a low, measured murmur, as if she were carefully considering each word before releasing it. "Join you?" she echoed, the question laced with a genuine curiosity rather than disbelief. "In this arrangement?" She paused, her eyes drifting downwards for a fleeting moment before meeting theirs again. "It is, certainly, an unconventional suggestion." Her gaze then shifted to Monika and Sayori, as if seeking their reactions, trying to gauge the overall temperature of the room before fully articulating her own thoughts. A subtle furrow appeared on her brow, hinting at the internal debate taking place within her. Was this simply a bold expression of their newfound intimacy? Or was there a deeper implication, a potential shift in the dynamic of their close-knit group? The possibilities seemed to turn slowly in the quiet depths of her mind, like the turning of pages in one of her beloved, intricate novels. Monika's initial surprise was quickly masked by a thoughtful expression, her emerald eyes narrowing slightly as she considered the implications of Izuku and Natsuki's words. The playful smirk she had worn earlier completely vanished, replaced by a more serious and analytical gaze. She leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed over her chest, a posture that often signaled she was deep in thought. "Well," she began slowly, her voice measured, "that's certainly a new development." She glanced between Izuku and Natsuki, a hint of curiosity flickering in her eyes. "I have to admit, it wasn't exactly what I was expecting." Her gaze then shifted to Sayori, a subtle concern clouding her features as she registered her friend's obvious confusion and hurt. Monica had always felt a sense of responsibility for the well-being of the group, and this unexpected proposition had the potential to disrupt the delicate balance they had worked to maintain. Turning back to Izuku and Natsuki, she continued, "You said, join you." She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Are you suggesting a group dynamic?" A myriad of thoughts seemed to flit across her mind. The potential for complicated emotions, the existing bonds within the club, and the implications for her own burgeoning feelings for Izuku. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, a flicker of intrigue battling with a sense of caution. The idea was certainly unconventional, as Yuri had noted. But Monica had never shied away from the unconventional, especially when it came to forging deeper connections with the people she cared about. Her mind, ever strategic and forward-thinking, began to explore the possibilities, the potential benefits, and the inherent risks of such an arrangement. Her silence stretched for a moment longer as she weighed the complexities of their suggestion, her internal gears turning rapidly. Sayori's initial confusion quickly morphed into a visible wave of hurt. Her bright, usually expressive eyes clouded over, and the corners of her mouth turned down in a subtle frown. She looked from Izuku to Natsuki, a deep crease forming between her eyebrows as she tried to process their words. The easygoing, cheerful energy that usually radiated from her seemed to dim, replaced by a quiet bewilderment. "Friends with benefits," she repeated, the words sounding foreign and unfamiliar on her tongue. She shook her head slightly, as if trying to dislodge the strange concept from her understanding. But what does that mean?" Her gaze lingered on Izuku, a hint of betrayal flickering within her eyes. They had been friends since childhood, their bond seemingly unbreakable. The idea of him sharing such intimacy with Natsuki, and then suggesting that she and the others join them, felt wrong. It was a departure from the comfortable dynamic they had always shared, a sudden shift into uncharted and somewhat unsettling territory. She glanced at Monica and Yuri, her expression pleading for some sort of explanation or understanding. Their more measured reactions only amplified her own sense of disorientation. She felt a pang of exclusion, a confusing mix of jealousy and a fear of their close-knit group fracturing. I don't get it," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you saying you're doing grown-up stuff together, and you want us to, too?" The innocence in her question highlighted her struggle to reconcile this new information with her understanding of their friendships. A small, vulnerable part of her felt left behind, unsure of where she fit into this unexpected equation. The usual lightheartedness had vanished, replaced by a genuine sadness and a palpable sense of being lost. "Something along those lines, Sayori, but understand that." Izuku's explanation cut short as a wave of nausea suddenly overwhelmed him. He lurched forward, his hand flying to his mouth, and he scrambled towards the nearest trash can, where the violent retching sounds filled the room. The reason for his sudden sickness was horrifyingly clear to him, though invisible to the others. One moment, he had been trying to navigate the delicate conversation, the next, his eyes had been assaulted by a fleeting but visceral illusion. He had seen Sayori, her expression twisted into something utterly alien, holding Natsuki's still-beating heart in her hand. The image had been sickeningly real, the crimson pulsing in her grasp a stark and terrifying sight. Then, with a casual cruelty that sent a jolt of pure terror through Izuku, Sayori's illusory hand had clenched, crushing the heart into a pulpy mess. Natsuki's body in the vision had then imploded, collapsing inward as if a vital force had been extinguished within her. The sheer brutality and suddenness of the hallucination had triggered his gag reflex, his body reacting with primal revulsion to the horrific scene his mind had conjured. As he emptied the contents of his stomach, his mind raced, the terrifying image seared into his memory. The brief moment of connection and burgeoning intimacy had been shattered by the stark reminder of the insidious darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their seemingly normal reality. His concern for Sayori intensified tenfold, the illusion painting a horrifying potential for the sweet girl he knew. "Izuku, you okay, buddy?" Monica asked, her voice filled with concern as she watched him double over, the sounds of his retching echoing in the room. She took a step towards him, her brow furrowed with worry. When Izuku finally straightened up, his face pale and his breathing ragged, the look in his eyes was wild and disoriented. "No," he gasped, shaking his head as if trying to dislodge a terrible image. "I saw." What the fuck was that? The force of his curse word, a stark departure from his usual polite demeanor, hung in the air, shocking Monica, Yuri, and Sayori into stunned silence. Their earlier confusion and discomfort over the "friends with benefits" proposition were instantly overshadowed by the raw fear and disorientation etched on Izuku's face. They stared at him, their own anxieties rising as they sensed that something profoundly disturbing had just occurred. "Izuku, what did you see?" Monica asked again, her voice laced with urgency and a growing sense of dread. She took another step closer, her hand hovering tentatively near his back. "What the fuck do you think I saw?" Izuku yelled, his voice raw with terror and disbelief. He clutched at his chest, his eyes wide and unfocused. "I saw Sayori, holding Natsuki's beating heart, then watched her crush it, making her body. Oh God." He doubled over again, the violent heaving sounds returning as the horrific image replayed in his mind, the visceral reality of the illusion overwhelming him. The others could only watch in stunned silence, their faces pale with alarm at Izuku's visceral reaction and the terrifying nature of his words. The cheerful atmosphere of the clubroom had been completely shattered, replaced by a palpable sense of fear and confusion. "Okay, what is going on?" Natsuki demanded, her voice sharp with alarm as she watched Izuku's horrifying reaction. She stepped closer to him, her initial annoyance and playful mood completely gone, replaced by genuine concern. After a moment, Izuku straightened up, his gaze locking onto Natsuki's. He saw the pure confusion and worry etched on her face, and the terrifying illusion from moments before seemed to war against the reality before him. Then, suddenly, a surge of emerald green lightning crackled around his body. Black tendrils of what looked like pure shadow erupted from his back, writhing and coiling like living whips, the unexpected display of power shocking everyone into stunned silence. "Whoa," Yuri breathed out, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Whatever is doing this to me?" Izuku muttered, his voice low and strained as the green lightning pulsed around him, the black tendrils twitching erratically. "It wants it perfectly clear that it wants me to fail, by twisting their minds." "Okay, Monica," Sayori said, her voice trembling slightly as she looked at the club president, her usual cheerfulness completely extinguished by the bizarre and frightening turn of events. What is going on?" Monica took a deep breath, her expression grave as she finally revealed a fraction of the truth. Izuku, he is a reincarnation. He was tasked with saving us from, well, neither he nor I truly know what, not entirely. But these visions, these sudden outbursts, they're likely connected to that." A sudden realization seemed to strike Izuku, his eyes widening with a mixture of fury and dawning understanding. "That rancid whore," he roared, his voice echoing through the stunned silence of the clubroom. "She's doing this to us." He slammed his fist into the wall beside him, the impact cracking the plaster with a sharp sound. "That stupid, motherfucking goddess is the cause of this bullshit. Making me rewind all the way back to my deathbed if even one person dies. Who the fuck doesn't notice something like this sooner?" His breath came in ragged gasps, the green lightning around him intensifying, the black tendrils lashing out like agitated snakes. The raw, unfiltered anger and frustration pouring out of him painted a picture of immense pressure and a desperate struggle against unseen forces. "Who now?" Yuri asked, her voice a soft murmur, her usual composure slightly shaken by Izuku's outburst and the raw power he was now displaying. "The goddess who reincarnated me," Izuku explained, his voice still rough with anger but now tinged with a grim certainty. "She's doing this to you. Your inner turmoil, Yuri, your anxieties, it's her doing. She's twisting your minds, preying on your insecurities." With a swift glance around the room, his eyes briefly meeting each of theirs, Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded note. He held it in his trembling hand and then, taking a deep breath, he recited the words written on it, the syllables rolling off his tongue in a language none of them recognized. Sakuri, Nokia, Mosakwa, Rutuice. Props to whoever can actually say this word for word. A moment hung in the air, thick with anticipation and a growing sense of the surreal. Then, with a sudden flash of light, a figure materialized in the center of the room. She had an ethereal beauty, but her eyes held a wild, almost manic gleam, and a chilling laughter spilled from her lips. "So," she said, her voice echoing with an unsettling glee, her gaze fixed on Izuku. "You finally figured it out, did you? That I'm not just some benevolent goddess. A demigod, actually. And I figured," she chuckled again, a sound that sent shivers down their spines, "that I could try to break your little minds, push you to the brink, mold you into the ultimate killing machine. Did you really think your little mission was just about saving some cute girls?" Before anyone could react to the demigod's shocking revelation, Izuku moved with lightning speed. The green lightning crackling around him flared intensely as he blurred across the room, appearing instantly behind the laughing figure. His hands shot out, gripping her head with surprising strength. In one swift, brutal twist, a sickening snap echoed through the room, the sound cutting through the stunned silence like a physical blow. The demigod's laughter abruptly ceased, her body going limp in Izuku's grasp. Her eyes, moments before filled with manic glee, now stared blankly ahead. Izuku released her, and she crumpled to the floor, an unnatural stillness about her. The literature club members stood frozen, their faces pale with shock and horror at the sudden, violent act. The casual cruelty of the demigod's confession was now overshadowed by the swift and decisive brutality of her demise. Izuku stood over her lifeless form, his chest heaving, the green lightning slowly receding. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and filled with a cold fury. "I will not be forced into such things. I am a hero. And you," he spat, his gaze fixed on the still body, "you are not human. And I know that mark anywhere." He pointed a trembling finger at an unseen mark on her neck. "You were branded with the discarded brand of the gods. Your twisted games end here." A moment passed, the silence in the room thick with disbelief and lingering shock. Then, the demigod's body began to shimmer, the flesh and bone dissolving into fine golden dust. The dust swirled downwards, sinking into the very floorboards as if pulled by an unseen force, presumably dragging the remnants of her being, her very soul, to some unknown abyss. "Wait," Sayori finally managed to stammer, her eyes wide with disbelief as she stared at the spot where the demigod had just been. "So, she really wasn't human." Izuku sighed, running a hand through his hair, the adrenaline slowly beginning to recede. "I mean, do none of you read Greek mythology?" he asked, a hint of exasperation in his voice. He looked around the room, and only Yuri slowly raised her hand, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I do, sometimes," Yuri said in her usual soft tone, her gaze thoughtful as she processed the incredible events that had just transpired. A faint blush dusted her cheeks as she then turned her attention to Izuku and Natsuki. "Also, to answer your question, I would like to join you two in your little comradeship." The last word was spoken quietly, almost a whisper, but her violet eyes held a surprising amount of resolve. "Yeah, same here," Monica said, a confident smile gracing her lips as she looked at Izuku. A hint of a blush touched her cheeks as she continued, "I mean, I'm all for it, especially since I've liked Izuku romantically for a little bit now." She then turned her attention to their remaining friend. "However, Sayori, what do you say?" All eyes turned to Sayori, who shifted her gaze between Izuku, Natsuki, Monica, and Yuri. A myriad of emotions flickered across her face, a touch of lingering confusion, a hint of nervousness, but also a spark of her inherent desire to be included and to make her friends happy. She took a deep breath, and a small, somewhat hesitant smile touched her lips. Sure," she finally said, her voice soft but audible. "Don't worry, we won't force you to do anything you don't want to do, Sayori," Izuku said gently as he walked over and wrapped his arms around her in a comforting hug. "And I'm sorry for hiding all of this from you. It was complicated." Sayori hugged him back tightly, a sense of relief washing over her as she felt the warmth and reassurance of his embrace. One by one, Monica, Yuri, and Natsuki joined the hug, creating a comforting group embrace amidst the lingering tension. Pulling back slightly, Natsuki looked around at their small group. And we have about 4 months until graduation, right? She asked, her tone matter of fact. Yeah, Izuku replied, a little confused by the sudden change in topic. Good, Natsuki stated, her voice calm and utterly resolute, a complete contrast to her usual fiery demeanor. After graduation, you're getting me pregnant. The quiet certainty in her voice was so absolute that it sent a shiver down Izuku's spine, and even the unseen presence behind the camera seemed to take notice. Hey, Nat, a voice called out, slightly muffled, you can't say that line like that. It kind of ruins the moment. What has Kyle said about breaking the fourth wall, Jacob? Natsuki asked, her tone laced with a playful reprimand. Not to do it, Jacob replied sheepishly, his voice slightly muffled. Now be a good boy and fix your mistake before Kyle arrives on set, Natsuki said, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Suddenly, a loud, piercing beep echoed through the room. A strange, disoriented look washed over everyone's faces, as if a brief moment of their memory had been erased. They blinked, their expressions blank for a fleeting second. Wait, Izuku said, his brow furrowed in confusion, the earlier tension replaced by a bewildered surprise. You want a child right after you get out of high school? The calm certainty of Natsuki's previous statement now registered with full force, unburdened by the bizarre interruption. Yes, Natsuki replied plainly, her gaze unwavering. Good lord, Izuku muttered, his eyes rolling back in his head as he promptly fainted, collapsing onto the floor in a heap. The sheer unexpectedness and finality of Natsuki's declaration, especially after the recent whirlwind of events, proved to be too much for his already overloaded system. Time skip. Several years later. The scene is filled with the joyful chaos of a sunny afternoon. Izuku, looking older and more settled, is the center of attention in a lush backyard, surrounded by 4 vibrant children. A little girl, perhaps 6 years old, with a thoughtful expression and a blend of Izuku's dark hair and Yuri's violet eyes, stands tall. Now, what do we say to boys who want to date you? Izuku asks, his voice warm and carrying a hint of playful authority. The little girl confidently replies, my daddy is obligated to lecture you for dating me. Have a fun time. Izuku beams, ruffling her hair affectionately. Good job, Abby. He looks at the other children with a loving smile. A slightly older boy, with bright pink hair and Izuku's determined jawline, bounces on the balls of his feet. He's the spitting image of Natsuki, but with a touch more of Izuku's softer features. A girl with long, flowing auburn hair and bright emerald eyes giggles, chasing butterflies nearby. She has Monika's radiant smile and a mischievous glint in her eyes. The youngest of the group, a boy with sunshine yellow hair and Izuku's distinctive green eyes, tumbles playfully in the grass, his laughter infectious. He has Sayori's boundless energy and cheerful demeanor. The scene fades out on Izuku surrounded by his children, a picture of a life filled with love and laughter, a far cry from the anxieties and challenges of his earlier mission. The back door slides open, and Natsuki steps out onto the lawn, a soft smile gracing her features. Her usual fiery energy is tempered by a gentle warmth as she surveys the scene. Behind her, Yuri follows, her long, flowing hair swaying softly in the breeze, a serene expression on her face. Sayori, her hair now a comfortable, medium length, skips out next, her usual cheerful grin lighting up her face. Monika is last, her auburn hair unbound and cascading around her shoulders, catching the sunlight as she moves. How are our little angels doing? Natsuki asks, her gaze softening as she watches Izuku interacting with their children. Lovely, Mama, the pink-haired boy, a miniature version of Natsuki with a hint of Izuku's steadfastness, replies, his voice bright and clear. He runs over to Natsuki and hugs her legs tightly. Ah, Loki loves his mama, how cute, Izuku said, feigning a dramatic pout and clutching his chest. But no hugs for me. I'm wounded. He then exaggeratedly stumbled and fell onto the grass, eliciting giggles from his children. Is Daddy okay? Abby asked, her brow furrowed with concern as she rushed over to his side, Yuri close behind her. Yeah, Daddy's fine, Abby, Izuku chuckled, opening his arms wide. Now come here, all of you. Loki, Sonata, he called out to the pink-haired boy and the auburn-haired girl who had been chasing butterflies, and you as well, Maria. One by one, Loki, Sonata, and Maria piled onto him, their small arms wrapping around him in a tangle of affection. Natsuki, Yuri, and Monica watched the heartwarming scene with fond smiles, the earlier chaos and anxieties of their lives now a distant memory, replaced by the simple joy of their unconventional but loving family. "And you four aren't excluded from the family cuddle puddle," Izuku declared, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. With a playful flick of his wrist, black tendrils of Black Whip shot out, gently but firmly ensnaring Natsuki, Yuri, Monica, and Sayori. He pulled them towards the sprawling hug, their laughter and surprised yelps adding to the joyful chaos. Soon, all 8 of them were tangled together on the grass, a picture of their unique and loving family. The sun shone down on them, casting a warm golden glow as the screen faded to black, leaving the audience with a final, heartwarming image of their unconventional happily ever after. The air in the literature club room remained thick with the unsettling weight of Natsuki and Izuku's proposition. But before anyone could fully process the implications, the terrifying illusion of Sayori crushing Natsuki's heart ripped through Izuku's mind, followed by the chilling confession of the demigod. "That rancid whore," Izuku had roared, his sanity fraying at the edges. "She's doing this to us." The raw fury and fear in his eyes were deeply disturbing to witness. When the demigod finally materialized, her manic laughter and cruel revelation seemed to be the final trigger for Izuku's already fractured psyche. The swift, brutal snapping of her neck was not an act of heroism, but a descent into violent madness. The golden dust that followed, the casual dismissal of a life, only seemed to further detach him from reality. "Wait, so she really wasn't human?" Sayori asked, her voice trembling, desperately clinging to some semblance of normalcy. "Humanity is a weakness," Izuku snarled, his eyes darting around the room, landing on each of them with a terrifying intensity. "She tried to control us, twist us, but I won't let anyone else." His gaze fixated on Natsuki, who recoiled slightly at the coldness in his eyes. You started this," he muttered, his hand instinctively reaching for the side where the judge usually rested. Before anyone could react, his movements were a blur. A gunshot echoed through the room, the sickening thud of Natsuki's body hitting the floor following a split second later, a crimson stain blooming on her temple. Monica gasped, her eyes wide with unimaginable horror. "Izuku, what have you?" His attention snapped to her, his face contorted in a grotesque parody of his usual gentle expression. "Control. She tried to control us with her words, her manipulations." His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. He moved with a chilling calm, producing a length of rope from his backpack with unsettling speed. In moments, Monica was struggling, her pleas muffled as the noose tightened around her neck, her lifeless body soon swinging gently from the ceiling fan. Yuri stood frozen, her face a mask of utter terror, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Izuku, please," she whispered, her voice choked with fear. His eyes, devoid of any recognition, fixed on her. The intricate beauty, so easily broken. A cruel smile stretched across his lips. He moved towards her with a terrifyingly deliberate pace. The sounds that followed were sickening, a horrifying tearing that spoke of brutal, inhuman force. Sayori, her mind unable to fully comprehend the escalating nightmare, could only whimper, backing away slowly. "Izuku, please, stop." His gaze finally settled on her, a flicker of something that might have once been affection now twisted into a grotesque mockery. "You just wanted everyone to be happy, didn't you, Sayori? Well, now you can be at peace." He grabbed her roughly, dragging her towards the small sink in the corner of the room. He forced her head under the shallow water, holding her down despite her desperate struggles, until the last bubbles ceased to surface. Silence descended upon the literature club room, broken only by Izuku's ragged breathing. He stood amidst the carnage, his eyes vacant, his mission to save them twisted into a horrifying act of annihilation. The darkness had consumed him entirely. Not a moment later he snaps out of his insanity and sees what he did, making him back up to wall and puke, and with slow shaking hands, he puts his gun to his head and pulls the trigger as the camera lens is drenched in the brain and blood of Izuku Midoriya. The world around Izuku shimmered, the edges of reality blurring like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. The literature club room, once a sanctuary of shared passions and burgeoning friendships, was now a distorted reflection of itself. Walls seemed to breathe, the posters of the girls flickered with ghostly images of their past selves, and the air crackled with an unsettling energy. He stood amidst the remnants of his actions, the golden dust of the demigod still faintly visible on the floor, a grim reminder of his failure. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him, the faces of Natsuki, Yuri, Monika, and Sayori, their last moments of life, flashing through his mind. His hands trembled as he looked at himself, his reflection in a cracked mirror showing a gaunt and broken man. The green lightning still flickered around him, but it felt less like a source of power and more like a manifestation of his unstable state. A faint whisper echoed through the room, a chorus of voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Izuku. The voices were fragmented, distorted, but he recognized them. They were the girls. He whirled around, searching for the source. "Where are you?" he cried out, his voice cracking with desperation. The whispers intensified, coalescing into fragmented images that flickered across the walls. Natsuki's defiant glare, Yuri's gentle smile, Monika's knowing gaze, Sayori's boundless energy. But these weren't memories. They were different, distorted. Natsuki's image flickered, her form momentarily glitching into a monstrous caricature. Yuri's voice echoed with a chilling, distorted tone. Monika's eyes gleamed with an unsettling, almost predatory light. And Sayori's laughter was laced with a haunting sadness. "We're here," the voices whispered, a chorus of broken echoes. "But not as you remember us." The room seemed to pulse with their fragmented presence, the distorted images swirling around him. The world was broken, and so were they. He had to fix it. He had to save them, even if they weren't quite the same as before. Driven by a desperate need to escape the suffocating presence of the clubroom and the haunting whispers of his fragmented friends, Izuku stumbled out into the school hallway. But the world outside was no less distorted. The familiar corridors of the high school stretched and warped before him, the lockers twisted into grotesque shapes, the posters on the walls shifting and changing into unsettling imagery. Other students flickered in and out of existence, their faces blurred and their voices echoing with the same broken quality as the girls' whispers. Time seemed to stutter, moments repeating themselves with slight, jarring variations. The air felt heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. It was as if the reality he knew had shattered into a million pieces, and he was trapped within the fractured remnants. He clutched his head, trying to fight back the encroaching chaos. "This isn't real," he muttered to himself, but the distorted reality stubbornly persisted. Despite the overwhelming disorientation, a single thought anchored him: he had to find them. Even in this broken world, they were still here, in some form. He had to find a way to reach them, to understand their fragmented state, and somehow, to put things right. A wave of desperate longing washed over Izuku, and he cried out, "Sayori!" As if summoned by his plea, the air in front of him shimmered, and Sayori materialized. But this was not the bright, cheerful Sayori he remembered. Her form flickered slightly, as if she were a glitch in reality. Her eyes, though still a warm brown, held a deep, unsettling sadness, and her smile was faint, almost melancholic. Her hand, as she reached out to lightly grip his face, felt strangely cool, almost ethereal. "Izuku," she whispered, her voice echoing with a faint, mournful quality. "What do you want with me?" Her touch, though gentle, sent a shiver down his spine. There was a distance in her eyes, a sense of being both present and far away. The boundless joy that usually radiated from her was gone, replaced by a quiet sorrow that mirrored the broken world around them. Tears welled in Izuku's eyes as he looked at the fragmented version of his childhood friend. "Sayori," he choked out, his voice thick with emotion, I want to fix everything. I want to bring you all back. The way you were, the way we were." He reached out, wanting to hold her, but hesitated, unsure if he could even touch her properly in this broken reality. "Please, help me. Tell me what to do." Sayori's sad gaze softened slightly as she looked at him, her cool hand still resting lightly on his cheek. A faint, almost wistful smile touched her lips. "Fix everything," she echoed, her voice a soft sigh. "Bring us back." She tilted her head, her brow furrowed in a way that was both familiar and unsettlingly distant. After a moment of quiet contemplation, she offered, her voice barely a whisper, "If you want to find us, if you want to remember, maybe you should remember what we loved." Her eyes seemed to drift away, focusing on something beyond him. Natsuki. She always loved baking. The smell of sweet things, it made her happy. Then her gaze flickered back to him, a fleeting hint of her old warmth returning. Yuri. She cherished her books. The quiet solitude of getting lost in another world. Her gaze drifted again, a melancholic smile touching her lips. Monica. She loved the piano. The way the music could fill the room, the way she could connect with everyone through it. Finally, her eyes met his again, the sadness returning. And me, I always loved the sunshine. And spending time with you, Izuku. Her hand on his cheek trembled slightly before she slowly pulled it away, her form beginning to flicker more intensely. Remember what made us happy. And then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, Sayori faded away, leaving Izuku alone in the distorted hallway, the echoes of her fragmented advice hanging in the air. He was left with a cryptic clue, a path back to them perhaps, but one shrouded in the broken remnants of their shared memories. As Sayori's fragmented form faded away, leaving her cryptic advice echoing in the distorted hallway, Izuku steeled himself. What we loved, he muttered, trying to grasp the meaning behind her words. He took a deep breath, pushing down the despair that threatened to consume him. He had to focus, to remember. He scanned the hallway, the warped geometry of the school making it difficult to get his bearings. Monica loved the piano, Sayori had said. With renewed determination, Izuku began to search for anything related to Monica, a clue that might lead him closer to understanding their fragmented state and how to restore them. He moved through the distorted corridors, his senses heightened, searching for anything that stood out amidst the chaos. He passed classrooms where the desks were contorted into bizarre shapes and where ghostly echoes of lessons seemed to repeat endlessly. He saw lockers that pulsed with a strange, internal light, and posters that shifted between cheerful club advertisements and disturbing, fragmented images of the girls. Finally, in a classroom that seemed slightly less distorted than the others, he spotted it, Monica's bag, lying abandoned on a warped desk. A surge of hope coursed through him. Carefully, he approached the bag, his movements cautious in this unstable reality. He reached out, his hand passing through a shimmering distortion before finally grasping the strap. He opened the bag, his heart pounding in his chest. Inside, amidst the scattered papers and pens, he found it, a small, leather-bound book. A single, elegant musical note was embossed on the cover. A jolt of recognition went through him. Her piano book, he whispered. He opened the book, his fingers tracing the musical notes. As he looked at the notes, he quietly sang them, his voice echoing eerily in the distorted classroom. As the last note of the melody faded into the distorted air of the classroom, a warmth bloomed behind Izuku. A soft pressure settled against his back, and familiar arms wrapped around him in a comforting embrace. A gasp escaped his lips. Slowly, hesitantly, he turned around. Standing there, her emerald eyes shining with a familiar warmth and intelligence, her auburn hair cascading around her shoulders, was Monica. Not the glitched, distorted echo he had seen moments before, but the real Monica, the Monica he remembered. Her smile, though tinged with a hint of sadness, held the genuine affection he had longed to see. Izuku, she whispered, her voice soft and real, sending a wave of relief and disbelief crashing over him. You remembered. Her embrace tightened slightly, a tangible presence in this fractured reality. The piano, the music, it anchors me here, somehow. Tears streamed down Izuku's face as he returned Monica's embrace with desperate fervor, holding her so tightly it felt like he might shatter if he let go. The feel of her solid form, the warmth of her presence, was a stark contrast to the ethereal and broken echoes of his friends he had encountered. Monica, he choked out, his voice thick with emotion and guilt. Monica, I'm so sorry. What I did, hanging you, from the ceiling fan, it was. I wasn't myself. I was terrified, and the darkness, it took over. Please forgive me. His words tumbled out in a rush, a torrent of remorse and self-loathing. He buried his face in her hair, the familiar scent a painful reminder of what he had lost and what he had done. The image of her lifeless form swinging in the distorted clubroom flashed through his mind, a fresh wave of nausea washing over him. He clung to her, as if she were the only solid anchor in this broken world, the only semblance of hope for redemption. Monica held him close, her own sadness evident in the gentle pressure of her embrace. She stroked his hair softly, a comforting gesture amidst the surrounding chaos. After a long moment, she pulled back slightly, her emerald eyes meeting his, filled with a mixture of sorrow and understanding. "Izuku," she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet empathy. I remember. The fear, the confusion, the way everything twisted. That demigod, she was insidious. She preyed on your fears, on your desperation to save us. What happened? It wasn't truly you. You were under her influence, driven to a madness that wasn't your own." She reached up, her hand cupping his cheek, her touch surprisingly steady. "I forgive you, Izuku. Truly, what you did, it was a nightmare, a terrible consequence of her manipulation. We all suffered, in different ways. But holding on to anger won't fix this broken world. We need to focus on finding a way back, together." Izuku, hope flickering within him for the first time since the horrific events, recounted his encounter with Sayori. He explained her fragmented message, the cryptic clues tied to their favorite things, and the unsettling implication that perhaps his own restoration wasn't guaranteed. He shared Sayori's advice about Natsuki's love for baking and manga, Yuri's passion for books, and her own connection to music. Monica listened intently, her expression thoughtful. So, she mused, their anchors in this broken reality are tied to what brought them joy, what defined them. That makes sense, in a strange way. We need to find those anchors, interact with them, perhaps resonate with their lingering essence. A shared sense of purpose ignited between them. "Then that's what we'll do," Izuku said, determination hardening his gaze. "We start with Natsuki, her baking and her manga. We need to find them. Together." Amidst the warped corridors and glitched realities of the school, Izuku and Monica embarked on a journey to find the remnants of their friends' passions, hoping that within those fragments lay the key to restoring them, even if Izuku's own fate remained uncertain. The path ahead was shrouded in the chaos of their broken world, but for the first time since the tragedy, they had a direction, a purpose, and each other. An hour of navigating the distorted school led them to the familiar yet warped structure of the library. The large, imposing doors were inexplicably locked, another sign of the fractured reality. With a grim determination, Izuku, recalling some less heroic skills he'd picked up over his many lives, managed to pick the lock. The click echoed eerily in the unnatural silence as the heavy doors creaked open. Inside, the once organized rows of bookshelves twisted and leaned at impossible angles. Books floated in midair, their pages fluttering erratically. Dust motes danced in the strange, flickering light that permeated the room. On a relatively stable table near the entrance, a small, worn recipe book lay open. Monica moved towards it immediately, her eyes filled with a flicker of hope. As she reached for it, Izuku scanned the towering, unstable bookshelves, remembering Natsuki's passion for manga. "They'd be on the higher shelves, wouldn't they?" he muttered to himself, his gaze fixed upwards. With a burst of his agility, honed through years of training, he began to climb the precarious stacks, the warped wood groaning under his weight. Books tumbled around him as he ascended, the scent of aged paper and something subtly off, filling the air. Finally, after scaling several dizzying heights, he spotted them, a small collection of manga volumes, their colorful covers slightly faded but still recognizable. He carefully gathered them, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. He had found Natsuki's anchors. Now, what were they supposed to do with them? He glanced down, seeing Monica gently holding the recipe book, a thoughtful expression on her face. Their journey had just begun. "Try reading the first page of each, like you did with my music book," Monica suggested, her voice hopeful as she carefully turned the brittle pages of the recipe book. "Maybe their essence is tied to the words, the stories they loved." Izuku nodded, a sense of anticipation building. He took the small stack of manga he had gathered and carefully opened the first volume. He began to read aloud, his voice echoing through the distorted library, reciting the opening lines of Natsuki's favorite series. He continued, picking up the next volume and then the next, reading the beginnings of each story with as much emotion and focus as he could muster. However, as the last word faded into the strange silence of the library, nothing happened. Natsuki's fragmented presence did not solidify. The distorted reality around them remained unchanged. A wave of disappointment washed over Izuku. "It didn't work," he said, his voice heavy. Monica frowned, tapping the recipe book thoughtfully. Maybe it's not just about reading them. Sayori said. What made us happy? What else did Natsuki love about her manga? Izuku thought for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. She was meticulous about them. She kept them in pristine condition, always organized in a specific order in that pink box she had. A flicker of understanding crossed his face. He quickly found a sturdy box amidst the scattered library supplies. Carefully, he began to arrange the manga volumes inside, placing them in what he remembered to be Natsuki's precise order. He recalled her specific way of stacking them, the way the spines aligned, the order of her favorite series. As he placed the last volume into the box, a soft light emanated from it. The air around them shimmered, and a figure began to coalesce. Standing before them, with her characteristic pink hair, a slight frown on her face but her eyes holding their familiar sharp intelligence, was Natsuki. The real Natsuki. Ugh, she said, looking around the distorted library. What a creepy place. And Izuku, what the heck is going on? Izuku stared at Natsuki, his jaw slack with disbelief and overwhelming relief. Natsuki, he exclaimed, a choked sob escaping his lips. He surged forward, his arms outstretched, ready to embrace her. Before he could reach her, however, Natsuki's hand shot out with surprising speed, wielding one of her manga volumes like a weapon. Bonk! The edge of the book connected squarely with the side of Izuku's head. Ow! Izuku yelped, stumbling back and clutching his head. Natsuki glared at him, her arms crossed over her chest, her usual fiery spirit very much intact. Shooting people, you idiot. What the hell was that? I wake up in this creepy, warped library after, well, I don't even remember what happened last, but I have a really bad feeling, and then you come at me for a hug after probably doing something completely insane. Her voice rose in pitch with each word, her usual tsundere demeanor amplified by her confusion and lingering fear. Rubbing his head, Izuku looked at Natsuki with sincere remorse. Natsuki, I'm so incredibly sorry. You're right. What I did was Uzasno. That demi-goddess. She messed with my head. She showed me terrible things, twisted my perceptions, she drove me to do things I would never normally do. He swallowed hard, the memory of his actions still a raw wound. I killed you, all of you, and Monica and I are trying to fix it, to bring you all back. Natsuki's initial anger softened as she looked into Izuku's tear-filled eyes. She saw the genuine pain and regret etched on his face. A sigh escaped her lips, and she stepped forward, her arms reaching out hesitantly before wrapping around him in a tight hug. Idiot, she mumbled into his chest, her voice thick with emotion. You really messed up, but, I think I understand. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. When I first appeared here, it was like fragments of memories, feelings, the fear, it was all jumbled. But I think I remember her voice, that creepy woman's voice, twisting things in my head. Making me feel angry, scared, like you were a threat. She squeezed his hand. It wasn't your fault, Izuku. That psycho did this to you. We should probably keep moving, Monica said softly, placing a reassuring hand on Natsuki's shoulder. The sooner we find Yuri, the better. With a renewed sense of urgency, the trio continued their search through the warped library. 2 more hours passed, filled with navigating treacherous stacks and deciphering the strange logic of the broken reality. Finally, tucked away in a shadowy corner amidst a collection of Gothic literature, Izuku spotted it. A single, worn book clutched in the ghostly image of Yuri's hands, the spectral fingers translucent and still. Carefully, Izuku reached for the book, his hand passing through the ethereal image before grasping the solid object. It was a classic novel, its cover faded and softened with age. Opening it gently, his eyes fell upon a familiar piece of paper tucked within the pages, the poem he had once given Yuri. The ink was slightly blurred, but the words were still legible. A wave of bittersweet emotion washed over him. He remembered the tentative hope and vulnerability he had felt sharing those words with her. Now, surrounded by the remnants of a broken world, he spoke the poem aloud, his voice soft and gentle, yet tinged with a profound sadness that echoed the loss and the longing in his heart. Each word hung in the distorted air, a fragile offering to the lingering essence of his friend. As the final verse faded, a soft shimmer emanated from the book. Standing before them, her long, dark hair flowing around her, her violet eyes filled with a quiet intensity, was Yuri. She looked around the warped library, a thoughtful, slightly confused expression on her face, the familiar book still held protectively to her chest. Yuri's violet eyes, still clutching the worn book to her chest, slowly scanned the distorted surroundings and then settled on Izuku and the others. What happened? She asked, her voice a soft, hesitant murmur, tinged with a lingering unease. Where are we, and why does everything feel so wrong? Monica stepped forward, her expression somber as she explained the horrifying truth. She recounted the demi-goddess's cruel manipulations, the twisted illusions that had plagued Izuku, and the terrible consequences of his temporary insanity. She spoke of the murders, the broken reality, and their current journey to restore them all. When Monica finished, all eyes turned to Izuku, who stepped forward, his gaze filled with deep remorse. Yuri, he said, his voice thick with guilt, I am so incredibly sorry. What I did to you, ripping you apart, it was monstrous. I was under her influence, twisted by her evil. There are no words to express how Uzasno I feel about it. Yuri listened, her expression a complex mix of shock, fear, and a dawning understanding. After a long, silent moment, her hand rose slowly, almost trembling, and with a soft, hesitant thwack, she gently slapped Izuku across the cheek. It wasn't a blow of pure anger, but more a physical manifestation of the pain and violation she had endured. Izuku didn't flinch. He simply closed his eyes and nodded. I deserve that, he murmured, the weight of his actions crushing him. With Yuri now walking behind them, her presence a fragile step towards healing, the trio continued their search. They navigated the warped hallways, their hope growing with each restored friend. Eventually, they came across a large, slightly faded photograph pinned to a distorted bulletin board. It was a picture of Sayori, her bright, infectious smile radiating even in the broken reality. Remembering Sayori's fragmented words, and me, I always loved the sunshine. And spending time with you, Izuku, a wave of emotion washed over him. He looked at the smiling image, his heart aching with regret and a renewed sense of love. Softly, his voice filled with a raw sincerity, he spoke to the faded photograph, Sayori. I love you too. A sudden, chilling realization seemed to dawn in Izuku's eyes. He looked around the now familiar warped hallway, his gaze settling on a sharpened pencil lying discarded on a twisted desk. An unsettling calm washed over his face, a stark contrast to the turmoil he had displayed moments before. As Monica, Natsuki, and Yuri instinctively took a step back, a sense of unease settling over them, Izuku turned back to Sayori's smiling photograph. His eyes, filled with a profound sadness and a strange sense of acceptance, lingered on her image. I love you, Sayori, he whispered one last time, his voice filled with a finality that sent a shiver down their spines. Then, with a swift, decisive movement that none of them could have anticipated, he plunged the sharpened pencil into his own throat. A gasp of horror escaped Monica's lips. Natsuki cried out, her hand flying to her mouth. Yuri recoiled in shock, her eyes wide with terror. As Izuku's body slumped to the ground, the distorted reality around them began to flicker violently. The warped hallways straightened, the glitched images vanished, and the unnatural energy dissipated. The literature club room reappeared as it should be, bathed in the soft afternoon light. And then, standing before them, blinking in confusion, was Sayori, whole and unharmed, her usual cheerful smile returning as she looked at her friends. Guys, what's going on? Why do you all look so? Her eyes widened as they fell upon Izuku's lifeless form on the floor, the sharpened pencil protruding from his neck. A chilling silence descended upon the restored literature club room. Monica, tears streaming down her face, whispered, He brought you back, Sayori. Natsuki stared in disbelief, her earlier anger replaced by a dawning horror. Yuri, her face pale, clutched her book tightly. Sayori's smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter devastation as she took in the scene. Izuku, what happened? Monica, her voice trembling, spoke the haunting truth, piecing together the fragmented clues of Izuku's words and actions. He said he wasn't meant to bring himself back. He saved us from what he did, but at the cost of his own life. A horrifying realization settled upon them, a daunting twist of fate that underscored the tragic nature of Izuku's mission. He had been a catalyst for their salvation, but his own existence in their world was seemingly a temporary bridge, a sacrifice necessary to undo the damage he had caused. The joy of Sayori's return was instantly overshadowed by the profound and irreversible loss of Izuku Midoriya. The silence in the room was shattered by a sharp intake of breath from Natsuki. Her hand instinctively flew to her stomach, her brow furrowed in a sudden realization. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and fragmented memories flickered through her mind. The stolen moments with Izuku in the empty classroom, the raw emotion, the lack of precautions. Her eyes widened in dawning horror and a strange, unexpected mix of emotions. She looked at Izuku's lifeless form, then down at her own body, a hand trembling as it rested on her abdomen. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tears welled in her eyes, a different kind of grief now mixing with the shock and fear. She looked at Monica, Yuri, and the devastated Sayori, her expression a blend of disbelief and a burgeoning sense of responsibility. "Earlier or whenever we had. In the classroom," she stammered, her voice catching. We didn't." She couldn't bring herself to say the words aloud, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Monica's eyes widened in understanding, her hand flying to her own mouth. Yuri gasped softly, her gaze shifting between Natsuki and Izuku. Sayori, lost in her own grief, looked up in confusion. "Natsuki, what is it?" Monica asked, her voice filled with concern. Natsuki looked down at her stomach again, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. I'm pregnant," she whispered, the truth dawning on them all with a poignant and devastating finality. Izuku's sacrifice had saved them, but it had also left behind a new life, a living legacy in a world he would never see. The future, already uncertain, now carried the weight of this unexpected and profound twist. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and now we will see you in the next video.